Chacon. Director Heldman.
Here.
Director Origi.
Here.
Director Hawkins.
Here.
Director Oscui.
Here.
Director Vasquez. Director Camacho Rodriguez.
Present.
President Apodaca.
Here. Invocation, please, by Director Hawkins. And Pledge of Allegiance. Ted Origi.
Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for allowing us to meet like this. And thank you for all the blessings that you've bestowed upon each and every one of us. Please watch over Central Basin as we go through some tough times. We have some decisions to make, that you will give them the wisdom, the power, and the glory of whatever it takes. Please watch over each one of us with you and give us hope and your blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Our flag is bright in color, brilliant in courage, and firm in faith. To these let us add our sincere pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Public comment and presentations.
We have a waters poster presentation. Cindy?
Kevin, we have 3 of the winners that are parking their cars right now. Did we want to do public comment first to give them some time?
We have a couple of comments that are not by specific item. Mr. Jim Flournoy? Or did you want to speak on the item?
I'll speak later.
Okay. Let me see if we have any that wanted to speak with David Gonzalez?
Good morning, President and board members, staff. I'd like to thank Director Frank. I attended the Diamond Valley Lake Tour Friday, and it was a very good tour. It was nice to get out. It was a little overcast in the morning, but when we got out there, it was a beautiful day. It was very informative in education. Kelsey did a wonderful job, assisting Frank. So I'd just like to thank Frank again for allowing me to attend that tour. It was a very nice day. I really enjoyed it. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Sandy, are you ready?
Okay. I'll talk slow. Good morning, directors. This morning we have a special presentation. Metropolitan and its member agencies every year host a Water is Life poster contest throughout the entire service area. And Central Basin has 5 winners here today to receive recognition on behalf of Central Basin. They were submitted to Metropolitan for the Water is Life poster contest calendar. We do have some calendars in the back of the room. And as everyone came in today, you saw the current winners that are displayed throughout this room and in the entryway here at the building. So I'm going to begin. Oh, yay, they're here. Okay. So I'm going to begin with our K through 4th winner. And I'm going to announce all of the winners first, and then if I could have the board join us for a group photo. So our first winner for K through 4th is Priscilla Barra. And you'll see displayed here on the PowerPoint screen, her entry is the first one. Congratulations. And we have her teacher here, Miss Makita. No, she's not here? Oh, she wasn't able to come. Okay. So, Priscilla, if I can have you stand up. And then this is your prize. Sit right here. Okay. Our 5th through 8th winner is Allison Barra, and her teacher is here with us today. Her name is Miss Ceballos. And we also have a gift card for Miss Ceballos, and that is for $50 at Michael's. Priscilla received a $25 gift card to Michael's along with her teacher. And our high school winner is Emily Kamal. And her teacher is also here with us today, and that's Miss Corona. And each of them received a $75 gift card to a store called Blick, which is very famous for artists. So they have really cool stuff. And then we have 2 honorable mentions. And so these are the 3 categories that we had, and then Metropolitan allows us up to 5. So we had 2 additional, and you can see those on the screen. So these are our honorable mentions. And we have Chelsea Auna. She's another high schooler. Okay, thank you. And there's her. And she received a $25 gift card to Blick. And we have Catherine Parra. $25 gift card to Michael's. So there you go. So, directors, if you could please join us to take a photo. By height. I don't know if Cindy was that kid in the front. You go right next to her. Let's have one at the end. And directors, if we can have you. Director Chacon, could you join us, please? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Where's the teacher? Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah. Is everybody set?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, if we can give them a big round of applause. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much.
I do want to take the opportunity to thank the teachers once again for being a part of our programs. This is one of the many programs in our education department that we have implemented here at Central Basin, and we're very, very proud of it. So it gives us an opportunity to talk to our members of the community and our families, nuestras familias de la comunidad, y hablar sobre el tema de agua que es bien importante en nuestras comunidades. Many of us come from communities. My parents are from the state of Michoacán and Sinaloa, and when I was a little girl, I remember visiting my grandparents in Michoacán, and we didn't have any running water. And every morning, my grandfather would go to the pozo, which is the water well, and bring buckets of water for us to use in our home. And growing up in this country, we have the great privilege of waking up in the morning and turning on the faucet. And that, it costs money. And we in this country take our water quality very seriously, and we make a huge investment to make sure that we can deliver a clean and reliable water supply to the communities across not only our Central Basin service area, but across our country. So let's not forget, water is life, agua es vida, and thank you for being here, parents and teachers.
Mr. President, we have one more speaker. Mr. John Munson from the National.
I'd like to say a few words to these people here, please.
Oh, please.
Gracias por viniendo ahora. Dios los bendiga y por favor sigan con el estudio. Como a la señora Vázquez, yo también, mi familia es de Juárez y yo nací aquí, pero me crié en un pueblo muy chiquito y nos llevaban el agua y también nos traían hielo para los refrescos. Y por favor síganle y Dios los bendiga.
We have one more speaker, Mr. John Munson from the National Parks.
Mr. President and board members, my name is John Munson, and I am a consultant with the National Parks Conservation Association. It was quite a few months ago that I was last here, and I was mentioning a study about the Cadiz water mining project that would lower the water table in the Mojave Trails National Monument and have an impact on desert springs and the life that depend on those springs. Since then, the Department of Fish and Wildlife has sent a letter to Cadiz indicating that its EIR is inadequate and that, and I'll quote here, the desert bighorn sheep, that the project would pose a significantly higher risk to the desert bighorn sheep than the EIR has disclosed. Bighorn sheep are a California protected species. And of course, SB 307, which you're all familiar with, was introduced in February, which is likely to pass the state legislature this summer. The bill would ensure that any future water transfers from aquifers underlying desert lands do not adversely affect the desert's natural or cultural resources. This would apply to the Cadiz project. But I'm really here not just to summarize some of the things that have happened since my last visit, but to mention some great news. On Friday, a federal court rejected the Trump administration's approval of the 43-mile-long Cadiz pipeline that would connect with in theory, with the Colorado River Aqueduct. It runs through federal public land and Mojave Trails National Monument. Since Cadiz had routed its pipeline along a railway right-of-way, it had argued that under the 1875 Railway Act, it was exempt from federal review under the National Environmental Protection Act. The Bureau of Land Management bought this argument after being directed to do so by the Department of Interior staff, as the lawsuit reveals. The NBCA, the group I'm representing, was a party to the suit. In Friday's ruling, District Judge George W. Wu said that the Trump administration failed to justify that the Cadiz pipeline actually serves a railway purpose, which is required under the 1875 Railway Act, and that BLM failed to explain why it had reversed its previous position of 2 years ago that the project required an environmental review. The judge referred the issue back to the Bureau of Land Management, and the next step will really be up to them. But there might be a federal review. BLM might need to go back and justify why it reversed its position, or both. So that's still to be decided. So I'd be glad to send you a link to the court decision and 3 articles about it, LA Times, National Parks Conservation Association, and the Desert Sun. I just wanted to have that update, and I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. With respect to the Cadiz project, we had an opportunity to visit with them, I think maybe about a year and a half ago. Our general manager had him at our Central Basin Caucus meeting. They shared a lot of, very insightful information. In fact, I believe that our general manager mentioned he worked with Cadiz in the past. And we are monitoring that situation, and I would love to have a conversation with you over coffee at some time. I will reach out to you.
I would be delighted to do that. And we also offer tours. And so we'd be delighted to do that. And Bonanza Springs this time of year is a little hot, but in the fall it'd be great. So we invite all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that invitation. We'll take you up on the offer.
Mr. President, we have 4 more speakers that would like to speak on item 19 after the discussion, and 3 that want to speak on item 21. So we can proceed with the agenda now, please. On item 4.
Staff.
Thank you. Good morning, directors. I just have a brief update for item number 4, MWD activities update. Just one item. at Metropolitan. So their board had authorized membership with the California Resilience Challenge, which is a statewide effort to build local resilience to droughts, floods, climate change impacts, and wildfires and sea level rises. Metropolitan will contribute $200,000 to this initiative, which will be used to fund grants and community-level climate change adaptation projects. Metropolitan will be bringing its expertise as a member of the steering committee, where the group will identify strategies to benefit the water sector across the state. So that's all I have for updates for Metropolitan. Thank you.
Tammy, I do have a question. What committees are we represented on now?
So right now, we're represented on the Bay Delta. That's with Director Apodaca. He represents us on the Bay Delta Committee. And then Director Heldman represents us on the Engineering and Operations Committee. And then I believe the Organization, Personnel, and Technology Committee. And then I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it, yeah.
Also, I'm interested in now that we have a little more time to look at some of the projects and also the budgets for the Metropolitan Water District. I'm interested in getting drilling down a little bit more about on the budget.
Okay.
And has the budget been approved by the board?
We're still in the biannual budget phase, so
Okay.
they will be bringing this to their board next year in April for the next biannual budget.
Okay.
They will start the discussions as early as October to get ready for all of their board reports and committee discussions at the turn of this calendar year, so that they can be ready to have the board consider a recommendation come March, April timeframe.
Okay. And is the Metropolitan Water District continuing to implement any water conservation education programs through their communications committee?
Oh,
If
yeah.
so, what's the budget for that?
Right. So I believe I can get you more detailed information on that, and I don't want to state specific numbers right now. I'm going to say it's in the realm of $10 million, but that's through the Water Stewardship and Planning Committee, and then they have a branch that goes into the conservation and the outreach, and I can certainly provide you more information about that at the Water Resources Committee that we're going to have next week in terms of what that budget is for conservation and outreach and what it's being used for.
Okay. And also, I'm interested in knowing which local resources grants were approved by the Met for what member agencies. I know that the Central Basin was approved, right?
Right now, that was the first one that's been approved since they made they had made adjustment on the yield as far as what acre footage that can be considered for the local resources project, and this ties in with the IRP that they're going to be working on and updating in 2020. So Central Basin.
What's the IRP, just so that our public can have a knowledge on that?
Right,
We use a lot of acronyms in water, I realize.
Okay, so the IRP is the Integrated Integrated Resources Program. And what they do is they look at all the water resources that are, every bit of water that's being used all throughout Southern California in their service area. And they put together plans. It's similar to the urban water management plan that all local agencies have to work on in terms of forecasting and making sure that there's enough water for the future, in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay. And how much is Central Basin receiving for our local resources program?
So for the local resources program, we are going to get paid,
$340 an acre foot for up to 500.
up to 5 years.
acre feet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that
Up to
again?
5 years.
For up to 500 acre feet, it's $340 an acre foot.
Okay. So it's how much again?
So,
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? I didn't get a chance to write it down.
$340 per acre foot is the payment, and I believe it's up to 500 acre feet that we're eligible for as the programs are developed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then ours was the first agreement to be approved thus far for all the applications that have been submitted to Metropolitan.
Okay, excellent. And so, excuse me, is the Central Basin, are we going to be able to benefit from the entire 500 acre feet up to the limit?
Absolutely, when we look at, for our recycled water project.
Okay.
That particular LRP, just as a reminder, we did a recycled water design project with 3 cities. And now that that's been complete under the Proposition 84 grant, now we're able to do a construction implementation part of that.
Okay.
And so that's what that LRP will help for.
Okay. And will you talk a little bit more about what that project is? You said 3 cities. What project is that?
And so those cities include the cities of Southgate, Bell Gardens, and Linwood. And we had done a grant through the Department of Water Resources, Greater LA Integrated Resources Management Group for a design phase to extend recycled water all throughout the city to include various irrigation for recycled water, parks, medians, locations such as that. So that report was completed with the Prop 84 or WIMP. So now they have the opportunity to build and implement based on that design.
Right.
And so that's where these funds will come from that will help as far as the LRP recycled water.
Okay. And what's the dollar amount? We talk about up to 500 acre feet. What does that mean in dollars?
In terms of, as far as the dollars that we'll receive from Metropolitan, in terms of the credit?
Yes.
It's,
For example, for the next year, we're budgeting $50,000 because that's the project that's been completed.
Okay.
And as other projects get completed, it'll go up to basically 340 times 500. And then we're getting off,
How much is it?
170 total.
170,000?
Yeah.
$30,000 a year.
If we
100,
could,
excellent.
if we get to the total yield.
Right.
Mr. President, I just want to mention, one of our directors has a tight schedule and has to leave at 11. So I wonder if we could, when the director's through the question, if we could skip the consent calendar and go to the action items.
Yes, so
Okay, so we can drill down a little more on this. I think it's very important for our purveyors to see the benefits that come with being a member agency to the Metropolitan Water District, and also the financial, the resources that come to the cities as a result of that. I think there's been a lot of discussion around that. Thank you.
right, okay, you're welcome.
yes, for the sake of time, and the purveyors are here also, we want to go on with the guidelines that you've suggested. So where are we?
I think if we go to item 19 and do that one first, and then we'll come back to the consent calendar, the rest of it.
Item 19?
Yes, sir.
Okay, review and approve water rate study completed by Rafaelis, including recommended rates and approval of proposed retail meter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So this item represents 4 different sub-items, but in eventuality, it's the passage of the fiscal year 2020 budget, the rates, the water study, and approval of a resolution for the fixed meter charge, as the President mentioned, and I'm here and I'm pleased to present today. So as we begin with the first slide, we've communicated these in some form over the last, I think we started in January, but let me just highlight 3. The first one is, as you have all seen, we've had dramatically lower potable and replenishment revenue. That's number 1. Number 5 is the need to meet the debt coverage ratio. We have in our bond agreements 115%, 1.15 times. That's also called the DCR. And the last item on the list is the board's recent action a week ago today to pass $350,000 in cuts. But just one extra item we would like to remind the board is a quote from Standard & Poor's. They issued a credit summary in June of 2017, and they kind of had a good forward-looking view that actually has come true. They talk about the rates that were passed in 17, all on the administrative surcharge, the volumetric rate. Here's the quote: "Despite these rate adjustments, we believe that potentially significant declines in potable and recycled water sales may continue to pressure the district's revenue base." Check. "We understand management is studying the feasibility of a new fixed charge to be implemented in fiscal 19. We're pretty close to that time frame. And here's the pull quote, "which we believe could stabilize the district's financial matrix and as a potentially favorable credit development." So just wanted to add that. So as we move on to the next slide, this is in essence budget option A, and we've entitled this revision 2. So as we go through and provide a little bit more about the district's fixed meter charge, I want to provide a little more justification. So as you look at this slide, we'll go into the 2 departments and those expenses. However, just to give a little background, you can see the district was formed in 52 with the purpose of providing an alternate water supply, an imported water supply, also potable. And the district became a MET member to fulfill that mission just 2 years later. So as it relates to the 2 departments, the first department is the Water Resources and Planning Department. Their costs make up a component of the fixed meter charge justification. You can see the goals for this department are related to reliability of the water supply along with protecting those rights. You can see the duties. These are items that we've mentioned in the past, i.e. MET representation. You can see the whole list there. As it relates to the expenses in this department, there's 4 types of expenses ranging from salary and benefits to outreach, consultants, and memberships. And so you can see the conclusion in essence says that all member agencies benefit from these activities. And a little further, regardless of levels of water use. Now there's another department that makes up the fixed meter charge, and that's the Board Services Department. As we mentioned, since the inception in 1952, this was a public agency, so it requires a board, a publicly elected board. In addition, in the 1990s, when the district added recycled water service, there weren't any additional expenses at that time related to adding that service related to board services. So again, you can see the categories of expenses, whether it's election expenses, per diem and benefits, outreach, consultants, and the same conclusion for this department. So just a little added explanation for these 2 departments and why these 2 departments make up the fixed meter charge and why that benefits all agencies. So the expenditure summary you can see by department. Some of the larger items, the increases were related to interest expense. That's about a $500,000 increase. That's related to the fiscal 19 defeasance. That's why that's a little maybe artificially low at 1.6 million. Overall, the total operating expenses increase approximately $240,000. And these are slides we've shown in the past. There have been slight revisions, but in essence, this is a similar presentation we've provided in the past. Here's the pie chart. As you can see, recycling operations and other outsourcing is the largest component, followed by interest and then wages. This is the org chart that represents the existing FTEs that make up the district's staffing. This does not take into account the recent board action to cut $350,000. This is the summary of the projections of the expenditures. Overall, in that period, the increase is less than 8%, which equates to a little less than 1.5% a year. As Sanjay Gar from Raftellus mentioned, those increases are very reasonable and are lowest among our peers.
What was that again?
Sanjay Gar from Raftellus.
It's the lowest among our peers. What do you mean by
Among
that?
the lowest. So the increases of that 8% over that 5-year period, about approximately 1.5% a year, are very low compared to our peers.
Who are you referring to as our peers?
Well, Sanjay has done rate studies in Raftellus for many agencies, and so I think it's his internal benchmark amongst other agencies, other water agencies in our area.
Which ones are those?
He didn't mention a specific list at that time.
It would be nice to know.
Okay.
There's always a lot of reference to unnamed parties, and I always like to get clarity on that, just so that we can have a reference, like a real live reference point.
We can get back to you on that. So this provides a summary of the components that we've discussed, i.e. the expenses. In addition, you can see the principal and capital of approximately $1.1 million in fiscal 2020. That mostly represents two of the larger projects. It's the Rio Hondo Pump Station rehabilitation, along with the Montebello Hills pipeline and pump station net project. As you can see in the revenue summary, I'll just highlight some of the top 3 items that bring revenue into the district. Generally, that's the first line, the recycled water sales. Along with number 2 would be standby charges, about halfway down. And then going back up, the third largest is the potable imported water administrative surcharge. Those are the largest 3 items. Some items that are kind of disappearing in the fiscal 2020 budget or substantially being reduced are the replenishment admin surcharge, because anticipating no replenishment sales going forward. That's about a third of the way down. And then a few lines lower than that is the LRP, or Local Resource Program rebate, which is decreasing by approximately $400,000. And again, in this iteration of what we're calling Option A, Revision 2, at the very last item, entitled Fixed Charge in the list, that equates to approximately $915,000. So you can see the overall budget summary for fiscal 19. There was a slight deficit of $172,000, and in fiscal 22, the proposed and recommended budget is a surplus of approximately $184,000. So we're getting close to the end. Here's the proposed rates. I think some of the items that are of interest to those on the board and purveyors in the audience are the administrative surcharge, which you can see in fiscal 2020 proposed is $190. And the last line on this slide, which is the annual fixed charge per retail connection of $2.88.
Okay, at this time, before we go to the thing, would the board like to hear from the people that speaker cards?
Yes.
Okay. Dave Alshire? Going once?
Please, sir.
Good morning. I'm Dave Elshire with the firm of Elshire & Winder. On behalf of the City of Signal Hill, who is our client and one of the purveyors. It's interesting, you have received legal opinions. Those legal opinions are very qualified. In fact, I think part of the presentation was trying to beef up the connection between the charge and the benefits received. And in fact, it was again a very generalized comment, and just like, I don't think it really achieved what your attorneys were seeking. With regards to Prop 26, the way you've gotten to where you are is you have a hole in your budget. And this charge is designed to fill that hole. In fact, a tax is a generalized charge that applies to a whole range of users. The purpose of that tax is to generally fund the system. Prop 26 said that has to be approved by an election, and there were a number of exceptions. And what you're trying to do is fit this through one of those exceptions. One of the exceptions, and it's reasonable, makes common sense, is if you have a charge that is for a specific benefit for a specialized type of service. So what you're suggesting is that these two departments are doing things that provide a specific benefit, and that this charge has to be then proportionate to the benefit. And if you looked at this presentation you had today, there was nothing showing what the specialized benefit is to the purveyors from this charge. In fact, the charge did not come about because of these specific categories. It came about because of a general budget problem, and that general budget problem is then remedied by this $900, almost $1 million, and this 288 charge. But that's not what Prop 26 is aiming at. You can get this exception if there's a specialized benefit. Your educational programs, really, arguably, they could benefit the entire region. The conservation it's a broad generalized. It's not specific to the purveyors, and it's not calculated based upon the benefit received. In fact, it looks like your capital expense, 40% of that is going for recycled facilities. These are not the sorts of, the expense has not been tracked through to this educational component and how that is providing a specialized benefit. So in the past, Central Basin has joined with Signal Hill and other cities when WRD was trying to impose charges and not going through the appropriate Prop 218 process. So you're actually doing the same sort of thing that WRD was doing at that point in time, and you joined us in that. So I think you actually have an understanding of these issues. The approach we took with regards to WRD was to provide a way out. We understand within the region, different entities perform an important service. WRD performed a service, and we tried, as John well knows, to try and give them ways to get out of that. They chose to go the litigation route, and with an outcome that was favorable for us. We would like to provide you that same opportunity. Central Basin plays a critical role in this region. We are not trying to just get in and get into a piece of litigation. We want to find a solution. We do not want Central Basin to go bankrupt. There needs to be a solution. So besides, we started off with the idea of, do we agree with your legal opinions? Is this legal? Do we have a valid legal basis to challenge this? this, and we came to the conclusion that we do. But we've had some further conversation. You received our letter, which should be entered in the record, and which challenges the action that you're taking. But you haven't taken the action yet, so there's still the opportunity to do something that's corrective. We, in trying to think through that positive role, really over the weekend with Signal Hill staff, we've come up with the idea that we think there maybe needs to be a period of time where you need some further funding, and we need to work on some solutions. We understand that you've done some things to reduce your expenses. We're not sure that you've done enough to reduce those expenses. We also believe that over the long term, we've seen entities who start off with a charge that seems fairly small and reasonable, but what happens is over time it accelerates. As their expenses go up, they have a bigger hole, and they keep coming back to this same mechanism. So we fear that if we don't raise a substantial objection now, what starts as a 288 charge is going to turn into a much larger factor in terms of your budget. So the time legally to oppose it is when you first start the mechanism, not to come back a few years later and say, gee, this has really gotten out of hand. So what our idea is to come up with something that gives you some breathing room, but preserves our right, if you choose to continue relying upon this funding source, to where ultimately, if we have to go to court and test it, then we can. So our idea is to basically provide, we would agree to a limited charge for a 3-year period. It would have a sunset provision on it. You would do this by resolution. We're thinking that the charge would be like $2, but what you would have to do over the 3-year period is figure out how to eliminate or make further reductions to further control your budget. We'd live with it for the 3 years. There'd be the sunset provision. We'd have strong language that would say that we have the right, if you haven't fixed these fiscal issues in that 3-year period of time, we would have the right to then go to court, and you could not raise the fact that we had agreed to this 3-year period against us in subsequent litigation over this. So what we would actually propose is that you defer this until the end of the month, that you appoint somebody who would meet with us. We'd get 2 or 3 entities on our side who could meet. I anticipate we would need to do this week and come up with a draft resolution that you could adopt. If you continued this meeting till Friday, we would come back with it by then, and we'd have a resolution that has these concepts in it that I'm talking about. The concepts being that there's a 3-year period, that we agree to a limited charge of suggesting possibly $2, but we could talk with your group during the period of time to see what we could reach agreement on, and that we would, in the resolution, basically it's a tolling. The resolution would have a tolling provision that gives us 3 years to, if these issues are not worked out by that period in time, we could then raise our legal objections to this fixed charge, which again, we think is contrary to Prop 26. It does not fit the exception, but we understand the timing, the pressure that you're under. We would like to give you a window. We would work with you during that period of time because we value the role that Central Basin plays. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have over our proposal. And again, at the time we prepared our letter, we weren't ready to make a compromise proposal. There may be some other purveyors out there who are not willing to agree at this point that the fixed charge could ever be legal. We've really had a very limited time to talk with the other purveyors, but from the City of Signal Hill standpoint, this would be a reasonable way to go, and I think Telly Tunnicliff's here has been working with others and believes that there are other purveyors who would get on board with this concept. So I'm sorry that we haven't fleshed this out better, but we are looking for a way to be positive, and we're hoping that Central Basin will see it in that light and give us this period of time to try and resolve this. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have your proposal in writing? Maybe we can...
I have it in an email.
Yeah.
And so we could get that to you. I think, again, it's very, it's just a few concept points, but we would be very happy to immediately start meeting with whoever you would designate as a representative to flesh that out.
I'm assuming your city is a member of the Central Basin Water Association?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I want to thank you for your cooperation and for bringing forward a proposal that, another proposal that this, board, can consider and discuss. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I
again,
received several calls from some of
Yeah,
your
it was sort of a
electeds.
Friday night conversation and trying to come up with an idea.
Comment. I appreciate you coming in. I've been talking to Ed Wilson,
Yes.
and we kind of discussed some of this ourselves, that we need to sit down and work some of this out. He's very familiar with bonds,
Yes.
and so he's asked for the bond documents. I just asked staff to send those over to him, because I think we got something we can work with, and I'd like to keep in touch with some of this.
That would be great. Yeah, Signal Hill's done a lot of bond financing, and there's actually a subcommittee with him and Lori Woods, and they've been in close contact with this concept.
Yes.
Any other questions, anyone? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Adriana Figueroa. Is Adriana here?
Yeah, I'm coming.
Okay, she's sorry.
Coming.
Kind of hard to follow David Alshire. Basically, I'm here to oppose the fixed meter charge. Our letter from the City of Paramount indicates so. We know you've made some difficult decisions. You were presented with a number of recommendations, out of which you only approved one, I believe, maybe two, very minimal. We still don't believe that you have made all the adjustments that you could make, as small as they may be. They do add up. However, we are reasonable, and just as David Alshire mentioned, we have been in discussions, many agencies have been in discussions just this last week. We are reasonable, and we are prepared to work with you to come up with a solution. We don't necessarily want to say, no, and we're not going to listen. I think the message is we are prepared to sit down and discuss it and see how we can help on our end, but at the same time, we want to get a commitment from you that you will make all the necessary adjustments that need to be made, that you will take this seriously, and as seriously as you can. And I think with that, we would be comfortable with sitting down and coming up with a solution, a reasonable solution that would benefit us all. So with that, thank you.
Yeah, I do have a question for you. When you say we, who are you referring to? Are you referring to the association? Are you referring to the City of Paramount's position?
The City of Paramount submitted a letter, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, opposing the fixed meter charge.
No, I understand that. I read the letters.
When I say we, is a lot of our agencies have been talking and have been discussing this, obviously. That's who I mean, the association members, other agencies that have been part of the discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark Grajeda.
Good morning, directors.
wrote a 2-page letter for the board with a lot of comments. But over the weekend, there was a discussion with a handful of cities and water agencies, of which Pico Water District, I, as president of the association, was one of them. Paramount was involved, Signal Hill was involved, and I think for the benefit of the rest of the board members, there are a number of water agencies involved in this issue. There are privates, there are special districts, there are mutuals, there are many cities. And you can see that when you look at the many letters of opposition to the retail meter charge that you've received. When we say we, that's who we're talking about. They can't all be here. Some of them are very small. But we've met with them in private. We've asked them to discuss this issue with us so that they understand what we're talking about, because some of them don't. They come here too, and they try to talk to the various elected officials, but they try to get both sides. And I'm hoping that many of you have reached out to your various cities and mutual agencies that reside in your service area and spoken to them. I hope that's happened. For the record, from all of the purveyors that I've spoken to, no one wishes this agency to go away. We water purveyors, rely on imported water for those that need imported water. Not all of us need imported water. You need to understand that. Not all of us have a connection to Metropolitan Water District, which is something you need in order to take water from MWD. Or you can get it wheeled through another agency next to you, but not all of us have that either. Some of us have recycled water, but not all of us have recycled water. So we felt in the past that many of the things you do here, we don't benefit from it. Especially if, based on your own slide, you were established to bring in imported water to the basin for 2 reasons. One, for those that need imported water because they don't have water rights, they don't have enough water in their system to provide it to their customers. And 2, and more importantly, 2, was to bring imported water for replenishment purposes. You're no longer doing that based on your own slides. You're no longer bringing imported water in to replenish the water district because you're no longer getting water from WRD. They've stated it, and your own staff has stated it. Over the weekend, a concept was framed of trying to negotiate with the board because of this need to fill in this hole that Mr. David Alshire has brought up. We do want to work with the board on that. We do want to help out this agency. But my issue with some of the purveyors that I've spoken to is when they look at the retail meter charge as it is and all the information that we've received so far, it appears to us to be an illegal charge. That if we go to court, you will not win. So, having said that, it's kind of hard for us to say, we'll work with you knowing that this charge is illegal. But we'll try to work with you. So, I haven't talked with all the purveyors. Many of the purveyors don't know about this new idea. It's an idea, it's a concept that we are trying to put forth to show good faith and work with this agency. It's a temporary fix for you. We want to see major, significant reductions in expenses. What was stated today was 3 years. For some, that might be a little bit too long. It might be 2 years with the concept of revisiting it in the 3rd year if the agency is moving in the right direction. That's all on you. But we are looking and hoping and respectfully asking you to consider postponing the action today to move forward with this so that we can flesh out this idea, this concept. We will do our best to work with you and try to negotiate something out, but based on what we've seen today and what's been delivered to the public up until now, we just don't see any movement by the board there. Thank you for your time. I'll take any questions you have. Otherwise, thank you.
Jason Wynn.
Actually, I do have a question for Mr. Grajeda. Mr. Grajeda, how much recycled water do you all purchase from Central Basin annually?
We purchase very little. I believe we purchase less than 80 acre feet a year.
46.
Less than 80 acre feet a year, right. And part of that reduction, directors, has been because of the new regulations by the State Water Resources Control Board to not provide water to the medians in the streets, the turf medians. There is a law, I believe they're pushing to try to be able to water the trees, but that cut out a lot of usage. We do use water at the parks, but the median strips that were...
Yeah, I was just asking the question of how much you purchase from Central Basin. The other question is, and I know the answer, but just for general public information, how much imported water do you purchase from Central Basin?
We do not have a connection to Metropolitan Water District.
Thank you.
Evan?
Yes, Jason Wynn is the speaker.
Any question? I start first. Good morning, everybody. So thanks for the opportunity for present something here. I'm not going to repeat it too much, seeing the others already present here. I hope everybody hope I have a crystal ball. But again, as we know, we have to make some tough decision to solve this problem. A couple of things I want to say. I know you received the 34, 35 letter from the 39 purveyors. Clearly in the letter, one thing challenge is like any, problem with compliance with Prop 26 exemptions. Clearly, also we ask for, we can work together, maybe form some kind of group or committee to see what is the practical solution we can deliver. It's still there. City of Lakewood is still, we opposed any retail charges. But again, like as I said, we work together to try to solve the problem. Also, we're not a legal person, but you received 4 legal opinions. 2 of them from the Central Basin, the reach out to the certain forms. 2 of them from other, association and the city of St. Hill. You can tell that the letter in general is agree on something. Basically, you do have a right to vote for that as a public agency, but you do have some challenge. If not 3, if not all the 4 letters say, you do not have a detail enough to link benefit and your charges, as stated by the others. Clearly, there's room there. I just want to remind everybody, it's basically, why you want to vote to prove it if there's a potential legal challenges. Clearly, we don't want to go there. Nobody want to go there. Clearly, that's the legal opinion. That is also from your lawyer and from other very qualified legal firms. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to say is recycled water. Clearly it's not my job to look at your budget in detailed fashion. But again, as a professional, I look at it roughly like you bet on 32% of your revenue on recycled water sales. That clearly is not original, the purpose of this district. But again, I question that. We are trying to find a crystal ball for these things. Do you know there's a lot of competition on recycled water? All we know is like a source of recycled water in the future is a big problem. Now you may get free water or very low charge from the sanitation district. There's no charge before. They want to give you the water. Now it's a different ballgame. As you know, WRD is competing for that resources. The Long Beach plant is run out of water. They remind people, hey, there are 3 months we don't have the water last year. Now also, Metropolitan, they're doing the regional project. The pilot plant is up running. They're going to pretty much suck all recycled water. I just remind you, when you make a vote to bet on 32% of revenue of recycled water, do you have the crystal ball? Are we going to run into a similar situation in a year, next year, year after? So we need, I don't know, do we have a sure on that resource of recycled water? Another factor is like water price. We try to subsidize recycled water for the good purpose. People, including people using recycled water. But to a certain point, I look at my recycled water sales, they're going to level off. Also, when the drought is coming, everybody cut first in recycled water. The reason for that is irrigation. So I want to make sure, ask a question again. You really think your recycled water is sustainable? I don't know. I didn't look at all the detail, but it's clear it's a valid question. Also, clearly there's a lot of a question mark over there. Third thing I want to say, it is not fair, it's not even right for us, for the purveyor, try to do the professional judgment on your budget, basically. I didn't read all the details. Clearly it's not right, but I'm just looking at generally, Conservation effort for last 5 years, 6 years, everybody's water demand dropped. City of Lakewood, I can tell you, from the 18 to 22%, depending on which year. Everybody have to make some tough decisions. Somebody's lucky enough, somebody's not that lucky. But again, I'm thinking about the sale of imported water here is gone. It's much lower. The same thing translates to the metropolitan. Their water sale price is low also because you didn't sell water, they didn't sell water either. But look at their budget, they increased 3% for the last 2 years. You increased 19.8%, 40% proposed for 2 years. Does that make sense? Another question is really, if you increase the import water price, is your projection still good? Is people going to try every effort not using more expensive water to balance their budget? I think I read the audit again. Nobody want to go there. Published in 2015, end of 2015. There's one thing here, they said you need to improve your revenue estimate. On the 5 years before, that's before 2010 and 2015, average $2.9 million operating deficit. 3 out of 5 years. This is nothing new. This is talking about before 2015. Are we still overestimating the revenue? We did it for sure for the last 3 years. So 8 years, we really need to find a solution. Some patch may not work. So as actually I read the audit in the morning, they need to call out one thing. So some of the benefit may be too generous. They include the $200 per month communication allowance. That's called out in the audit. In the highlighted one page, I still have that here, I just remind you that is the state audit. Last thing I want to say is, you do not have to approve the fixed meter charge because that's fixed challenge today. Like I said, you may consider operating on the other things like a bond or maybe reserve. Nothing wrong with that. We also argue, you have to keep the debt ratio. That's 150%. And to read the definition, basically, it's your net revenue minus your expenditures. You're looking for the revenue all the time. It's the revenue minus your expenditures. If you can drop down your expenditures significantly, your ratio will be okay, like anybody else. Thank you very much for the time. If you have any question, I can answer.
Questions, anyone?
That concludes any speakers since now the board's deliberation.
Can I turn my card in?
Okay, board pleasure? Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My name is George Perez, and I'm with Track 180 Water Company, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I just want the board to know that I and everybody there at Track 180, we agree with Signal Hill, Mr. Grajeda, and what Mr. Nguyen just shared with all of us right now. Just want to mention at the last meeting or workshop that was held here, I believe Monday of last week, I know I was asked to be civil. I apologize if I was trying to be funny or get out of hand. That was not my intent, but it was frustrating to see a good hour wasted on directors' communication, salaries, car budget. It made it look like we, the purveyors, were attacking the directors, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that is our intent. That is not my intent. If anything, I am one for empowering the directors and providing them with the funding that they need to do their job and to do it well. So I wanted to state that, and again, Track 180 is against this meter charge, but we are willing to work with any of the individuals who spoke here today to try to resolve the matter. And again, we hope there is a no vote or the vote is postponed regarding the meter charge. And I thank you very much.
I got a question, Mr. Perez. More or less, do you guys have anything you think you might agree with?
We might what?
Might agree with.
In regards to?
Our decision today, maybe we can hold off.
If you can hold off and maybe take into consideration Signal Hill and what Mark Grajeda had to say, I mean, I would definitely like to be a part of that, and I think that was a very, very good idea. And
thank you.
To see what happens. Thank you, Director Chico.
I have a question.
That concludes any comments.
So you want to present your motion then, or staff's motion?
I actually have a couple of questions before we move forward with the action.
The chair, for you've been going through without me.
Thank you for exerting leadership. Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I have some questions. Thank you. So I want to thank all of the purveyors for being here. I think this is a very important decision that is before us. This is a proposal that was made by our general manager last year. And this is not a proposal that our elected directors are pushing. In fact, I have questioned this meter charge since last year, and I asked our general manager to actually start talking to our purveyors about what their opinion was about this meter charge last year. Unfortunately, the discussions have never happened until a month, or actually until 2 months before we were expected to vote on this budget. Is there a reason why we have not considered volumetric increases, water rate increases?
So each rate study, beginning in early May, has provided two options. One being all on the volumetric rate, or number two, in that rate study, each rate study, a volumetric rate and the fixed meter charge. So that's been a recommended option every step of the way for the three rate studies, the last being option A, revision 2, that's included in the board packet for this meeting.
Okay. Mr. General Manager, is there a reason why we're not having more broad discussions with the purveyors about the volumetric water rate increase, which basically means that, those individuals that take water from imported water and recycled water would be the ones that would pay
Two reasons,
the increase?
Two reasons. One is it's not equitable to continue doing it the way we're doing it.
Why would you expand on why that is not equitable?
As we've presented early on in this thing, we really do believe that the
Who's we?
In the report that was done by the rate study consultant, in the work that I've done over the last year, and in discussions we've had, my personal opinion is that it is not equitable to continue to put all the charges on the volumetric rate. Agencies who don't take volumetric water benefit from us. In the past, we've gone over that because we could predictably say they're going to take replenishment water. Now, it's not going to be predictable. We can't budget for that, and there's no way that they're contributing to it.
Okay. Now, has that discussion been had with the purveyors, the option of a volumetric water rate increase? And if so, what has been the feedback?
The same discussion that you've heard, all of our discussions have been held in public here, and that there are agencies that take water on the volumetric side, and this fixed charge may save them some money. Some of them are actually opposing the fixed charge and don't realize that. But no, it's the board's prerogative if you want to do it. Second thing, though, as I was going to say, there are two reasons. One is that it's not equitable. The second thing, it doesn't solve our financial problem of long-term financial stability, because our volumes will continue to go down. conservation continues as it is and the demand for water in this region shrinks since it's not a growing area, the groundwater will continue to supply the majority of it, and our demands could drop further, which further puts our finances at risk. So in the long term, we need something to stabilize our finances. Now, the other option we looked at, and we're still looking at, is a parcel charge, and we've started the process of doing the survey. We'll be discussing that next week. But those are the two reasons primarily. It's not equitable to put it all in volumetric, and the second is that it doesn't solve the problem long term.
Okay. Now, with respect to volumetric rate increases to meet our current projected expenses, what do those numbers look like? If you can refer to those numbers on this presentation before us, that would be great.
If you go to, I believe, as part of the packet, the last page of the agenda item, it's table 6.7.
What page is that?
I'm going to need a little help.
The last page on the agenda
I have
is
the
364.
report, I just don't know what the page is.
181.
Page 181.
Mr. President, I gotta excuse myself, I gotta run.
181.
You okay? Just for the record, before I leave, I oppose anything to get rid of any employees. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Okay, page 181. Would you mind putting that on the screen so that we can have the information available for our purveyors that are present?
Go back a couple slides. This one.
Okay, it's now 181.
So you can see the rate is $288 per fixed meter, retail meter, and the administrative surcharge is $190. If it's all on the volumetric
Hold on
rate...
one second, I just want to follow you. You're on page 181?
Correct.
Okay, that's not what's reflected on the screen, right?
They're a little different, but they do have all the rates.
Okay.
Mr. President, if I may, just try to simplify in the interest of time. Andrew, the proposed rate study, the proposed rates that you're having here on the slide, how much money are we going to raise based on this, roughly? $1 million? Is that what it is?
It is, if you look up on the table a little higher, that would be table 6.6. It's approximately $915,000.
$915,000. Our projected is what, 10,500?
11,000.
11,013.
Take 951 divided by 11,000, it will be roughly about $90, right? More or less.
Correct.
So
$83.
if you want to do a volumetric charge, you're adding $90 to the existing rates. That's what it's, right?
$90 to the charge that was put in with the 288.
Right.
So it'd be $280 roughly.
Right.
Yeah.
So $280 an acre feet
$273, but yeah,
Yeah.
for imported water?
if it was all volumetric.
Okay, so 200, what's the current rate?
The current rate is $135.
So 135 is what we sell imported water currently, is our rate for imported water.
Surcharge.
Okay. And then 280, that would,
More than double,
okay,
just to put it in perspective.
okay. And that's for imported water. And what about recycled?
If you look at that page, that table 6.6-7, the water rate study says $759, and the current rate is $729.
So it would go from 729 to, oh, here it goes, yeah, to 754. Okay.
Mr. President, again, in the interest of time, if I may interject something real quick while we're doing the math. Mr. Alshire eloquently presented the case and the logic for the objection and a compromise solution, and I think in there was a willingness to consider both a volumetric adjustment as well as a fixed charge of some sort, whatever you want to call it. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Alshire, you mentioned a number close to $2 and thereof. So there is no issue, I think, right now for us to be only considering a volumetric charge or the other way around. I think we all understand that it has to be a combination. That's a fair and equitable way of distributing the cost, and we should be focusing on that rather than going to the step one and trying to find the genesis of the discussions that we've had over the course of the last year, why we're not considering this option as opposed to the other. We've already heard clearly from them that they're willing to compromise based on a continued conversation, and if I again correctly heard you, Mr. Alshire, you mentioned the end of the month, and the end of the month you meant June, right? Which is 5 days from now. So things need to happen rapidly. We need to save time in these discussions and get to work, get to the drawing board with the purveyors and figure out a solution.
Well, that's what this meeting is actually meant to do, and I'm trying to go through the process and have an open and transparent conversation about this. We have a number of purveyors represented here, and I feel very uncomfortable with agreeing on a meter charge when we have almost 40 letters from cities that are not represented that I haven't heard say that they agree to the proposed meter charge that the city of Signal Hill has proposed, or the tolling agreement that is being proposed by the city of Signal Hill. So, I would be in agreement to pause and to have further discussions with the purveyors, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not satisfied with only hearing from a small number of the purveyors. So if deferring this action means we're going to get an opportunity to talk to everyone, then I would certainly support that.
Mr. President, based upon the discussion I've heard and Mr. Alshire's presentation, I would like to suggest for the board's consideration a modified resolution that's in your packet, but adding these 3 items to that resolution. Be it further resolved that the retail meter charge hereby authorized shall terminate on July 1, 2022, unless further extended by the Board of Directors. Be it further resolved that the President of the Board shall appoint an ad hoc committee to meet with representatives of the Central Basin Water Association to work on alternatives during the next 3 years. And be it further resolved that the board hereby waives any defensive latches in the event the adoption of the retail meter charge is challenged in court during this initial period of its application. That would address the key points that Mr. Alshire so eloquently presented. It would not require such intense meetings during the next week. You would have satisfied what their concerns are, and the matter can proceed, and a budget can be adopted today.
So my question about that is, okay, go ahead.
Mr. President, I will not be ready to vote on anything until we consider the additional cost-cutting measures. The 288 hinges on one item that was approved by this board. There are many items that were put in front of us that we didn't vote on. The 288, I think, could be further reduced if we seriously
My concerns remain. We don't have all of the purveyors represented here. This past week, I was at the National Association for Latino Elected and Appointed Officials on my own dime. I paid for it myself, just like I have paid for memberships for the Chambers of Commerce to the cities that I represent out of my pocket, because the Central Basin is no longer funding that. And in my discussion with some of the elected officials in our service area, city council members and school board members, they have indicated to me that they do not support the meter charge. And these are individuals that have staff members here that are representatives here that are actually saying that they support the meter charge. So I'm getting a lot of mixed messages, and I again would like to err on the side of caution and make sure that we have properly communicated with all of our purveyors before we even consider this meter charge.
Mr. Grajeda, I'm sorry, Mr. President. Mr. Grajeda, Central Basin Water Association, how many of the purveyors are members of those? And you're representing the position of Central Basin, which in my mind would reflect their position?
They're all here. They're all members. The thing about it, this idea that Mr. Alshire has put forth is just at its beginning. This is an idea that's cropped up because we've decided that if the board were to take action on the retail meter charge, we would sue this agency. And this idea has come out from a way of staying off that lawsuit. So it's fresh. Part of what you said is absolutely true, Director Vasquez. You have the letters from the water agencies that says no retail meter charge. Pico Waters provided you 2 letters. But if we can come up with some kind of compromise that we can negotiate to stave off litigation, we would consider talking to you to try to negotiate something out. That's what this is so fresh. It hasn't had a chance. That's why.
Right, and until that happens, in my opinion, it's just not wise for us to even approve a meter charge, and that's what we're being asked to do in one shot. We're being asked to approve a meter charge. We're being asked to consider a tolling agreement, which we only heard from one city officially has agreed to a tolling agreement. We're being asked to agree to a budget that is still not balanced. I mean, there are just too many issues here. I would certainly consider putting this item off.
Do you have a substitute motion?
If I could just restate that Director Skewy is going in the direction we'd like. We would like a timeout to try to negotiate these things out, to try to bring more agencies in, to try to come back and negotiate these things out, directors. That's what we're asking.
Mr. Grajeda, is it fair to assume that the referenced city officials and school district officials were not necessarily privy to the information that developed over the course of the weekend? They were going based on staff's advice from 2 weeks ago that resulted in writing those letters of opposition, that this is a new course. Not too many people already know about it, but it's something that is being put forward in order to reach a solution rather than going the litigation option.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, which is why it's important for us to defer this action so that we can provide them with the information that there is now some level of agreement from a portion of the purveyor community that they're unaware of. And they're the policymakers. They're ultimately the individuals that.
Yes, Hillman.
I'd like to make a substitute motion, or if there's an initial motion, to defer this matter no further than this Friday, to assign some type of ad hoc committee with the representatives from the board as well as CBWA and whomever else wants to participate. But I think the intent of the motion would be to come back this Friday with the best and final, because all of us have sat around and gone through this issue many, many times. So I think that we've all made concessions. We've all taken things in consideration. We just need to really put this down in the form of a bottom line, see if it's something that we can live with. I agree with Director Skewy's point that the budget needs to be set so we can actually calculate what charge we're talking about. So it's kind of one of those situations with the cart before the horse. And I think that if there's no glaring reason why we can't defer this item further.
May I make just a suggestion? a number was put out here of approximately $2. A discussion was held about cuts that need to be done. Is there a reason we can't do that today? My concern is as we get farther down the end, we have to adopt a budget by the end, and if anything happens, we can't get a quorum, then there's no safety factor.
Well, then under the advice of legal, if that stated the way he had mentioned it, if it was to be limited to not more than $2 meter charge, with the cuts to support the actual budget, that would be something that would be considered.
I will second the motion to defer the decision until this Friday, but realistically, we have 3 working days between now and then. It doesn't make any sort of sense for an ad hoc committee to be formed, go into negotiations over the course of the next 3 days, and then come back and not be able to agree on cuts that is required to further reduce the proposed meter charge. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Let me finish, please. The $800,000 that is, I'm sorry, the 88 cents to, was it 280 or 288?
It's 288 on table 6-7.
So 88 cents reduction. What does it translate into dollars for further cuts in costs?
$270,000.
Call it 300 to round it out?
Yeah.
So we need to make decision on cutting back $300,000. And I urge everyone to do that today. Because it doesn't make any sense for us to go negotiate over something that we cannot achieve. So we need to agree on the cuts first, and then go and develop the framework that was mentioned into the resolution.
Can I make a comment now?
I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. I think there's obviously a philosophical difference in the role, the function, and the services at this agency that each and every director has in terms of what this agency should do. And I think a reflection of that is the fact that there are some directors that are interested in cutting more services. I have been at this agency for 7 years. I ran for this water board because of my commitment to reform this agency. As I've mentioned before, when I got elected, we had the litigation against the WRD around the Prop 26 issue. We actually dropped the lawsuit that helped the process for the purveyors that were involved in the lawsuit individually to settle the lawsuit. There was another lawsuit that I won't go into detail about, but it was also settled with the Water Replenishment District. We eliminated our federal lobbyist. We eliminated our state lobbyist. We eliminated the engineering, the services of an engineering firm that provided 4 engineers to this agency. Every year since I've been here, we have eliminated costs, and we have eliminated programs. More recently, we eliminated all of our education programs that we implemented throughout our service area. We, in terms of taking a personal cut, we froze the stipends that the directors are given for the work that they do. We reduced the car allowance that the directors receive to $300 and some odd dollars. It was to the tune of $500. So we have, in the course of that, our general manager actually recommended that we hire an additional, I believe it was between 5 and 7 staff members. And now...
That's not true.
Okay, and now we have actually released some of those people. One of them was Mr. Lonnie Curtis. And since you're saying it's not true, I will go ahead and name those employees. We added about 2 staff members in the finance department. It may have been 3. Our board secretary added, how many employees did you add? Maggie? And I know she was recently released, but...
You're referring to the records management.
Right. So we had an addition in the records management unit. And so, all of that was being introduced by our general manager as we made other cuts, but also as our water sales declined. When I came on board, we did not have a finance director. Our finance director duties were being contracted out, so we hired a finance director. There have been a lot of changes here. And, as I have mentioned before, we're a public agency that we need to revisit the services that we are interested in delivering. I understand that there have already, our general manager has already identified 3 positions that will be eliminated. One of them is the position of the individual that actually helps us.
Excuse me, Director, that is totally inappropriate and has not been decided on, and that's totally inappropriate.
Okay. Well, I'm just... it's based on the information you've given me, sir, that you've already, and so I think that this board has an obligation to look at those positions and know what's being cut. That's a service that has helped us bring revenue into this agency. Connecting, it's the only other source of revenue that we have is the recycled water connections. So I agree with my colleagues that we need to put off making this decision. However, I believe it is very, very important that if an agreement is reached with the purveyors in terms of this meter charge, that we should have a signed tolling agreement with each and every of the purveyors that we have. Because if we don't have a tolling agreement, which is very, very important, then we will have to deal with litigation. And so I would like our general counsel to work with our purveyors to make sure that if we are going to make a decision on Friday, that we have a tolling agreement that will include each and every purveyor that we service. Thank you.
Director Scuy, do you have any suggestions?
Tolling agreements are agreements between 2 parties. What if the purveyors don't want to sign an agreement, tolling agreement?
Well, my concern is that, and that's exactly the point that...
So what is it going to do to us in 3 days?
Well,
decisions have to be made in 3 days.
Okay, sir, we have purveyors that are here representing themselves as representatives from the entire purveyor community. And so my concern is that, again, if we vote on this meter charge, which is being proposed by a handful of purveyors, that we're going to open ourselves up to being sued by purveyors that are not here, that are not represented as a part of this discussion. So that's my concern. And I believe we can protect ourselves if we get a tolling agreement with everyone signed to it.
Mr. President, we have a budget to approve before 1 July, which is 3 days from now. Tolling agreements or any other sort of agreements has to be put before the governing body of those agencies. And I can tell you, put it on the calendar of the city council, ain't gonna happen until a month from now, earliest. So that goes out the door. So whatever we have to do before the end of the month, 3 days, has to be done in absence of a tolling agreement with every single purveyor, which I don't think it's a practical solution, to be honest with you. Nonetheless,
it's the only way to protect ourselves.
I feel that this board is not hearing what has been repeatedly told by the purveyors, that we need to make cuts. We need to take a look at those cuts again. We talk about reform, but we're not even ready to make a decision on the comments, or no, not the comments, the recommendations, strong recommendations by the state auditor. After 3 years, we still have a couple of provisions that are left out there, and we haven't been able to make a vote on it and agree to it. Talking about how can we sit in here and approve elimination of positions when we are, as a board, we are not ready to make a decision about letting go of 1 cent of the compensation? I heard a comment about the feeling about the board members is that they are not getting compensated enough. And when we compare them to the other agencies, who are we comparing them with? Let's compare them to the purveyors. Most of them, they have council folks, council members. They don't get a $200 allowance for telecommunications. They don't get a fixed amount. Most of them don't get a fixed amount for car allowance. They don't have. You look at the figures from CalPERS. They don't have a pensionable salary of $52,000 or $48,000. They don't. I know my city council doesn't.
Neither do the directors at Central Basin.
I'm sorry?
Neither do the directors at Central Basin.
We don't?
So you might want to check that. No.
What about health care? What about health care? Lifetime health care.
Directors?
Central Basin does not get, directors do not get lifetime medical benefits. That's just not accurate.
It is a health maintenance account that you get $4,000 per individual, $8,000 per a couple, and $12,000 for a family, but it's not $12,000 total.
No, it's up to $12,000.
Yeah, if you have a family and it's for supplemental medical expenses. But getting back again, we've had those arguments, and there are legal reasons why we can't go into some of that. If we might go back to the point that was brought up, that the budget as is, there was a desire for cuts. You said an additional $300,000.
Right.
Okay. With that, we can get the meter charge down to $2. Okay. And we keep the water rate at $1.90. To do those cuts, we would reduce staff by 4 people, not 3, and we would also have to come up with additional money. Again, one recommendation I make that would hit all 8 directors is that for the next year we forgo director travel without going to the board for it. That saves $32,000. The balance of it I can cut in by cutting out consulting costs, etc. It'll be a lean, mean district for the next year. Second, going forward, we had a proposal this be a 3-year tolling agreement. I think that's great. I do think that there are inflationary increases, but we can keep the fixed charge at $2 for 3 years, knowing that that's not sustainable in the long term. But we go up with inflation type thing. The legal challenge, I don't think we're going to get a tolling agreement signed by every agency. It could theoretically be signed by the Central Basin Water Association, but I'm really not that way. I think it's a nice thing for us to toll and say they don't have it. I don't think we're weak legally at all. We have had an opinion. We've checked it. We've had a second opinion. They read the little nuances into what they want, but the bottom line, it's a rock-solid opinion, and I think while we waste a lot of money in court to prove it, at some time you may have to do that. So it just would make sense today to bring this to a head, adopt a budget that's lean, that has a fixed charge in it, and that starts reducing staff to where it needs to be. And that would, to me, would at least we'd have something done today that, because as we go farther on a week, the pressures to get things done and then the ability to pull a quorum, Director Chacona left today, is going to be gone the rest of the week. I believe Director Rigi came down from the east, up a different place. He came down as a thing for today. It's going to be hard to get a quorum going forward. So I would recommend the board take an action of some kind today.
Mr. President, if I may, just to make it clear, there is a substitute motion on the floor, which was by Director Hellman, seconded by Director Oscui.
What was the original?
The original motion is right before you, which was that the board approve the water rate study.
Thank you.
Call for the question.
Roll call.
Just for clarity, could you repeat the substitute motion? We've heard a lot of information in the
Your
last few
substitute
minutes.
motion was to defer the action to Friday.
Yeah. I'm going to withdraw that motion. I think we need, I agree, I think we need to I think we're going to
Try and resolve it.
Well, I'm going to withdraw that motion.
Would you repeat the pending motion? After withdrawal?
The substitute motion was to defer the action to Friday. I just heard Director Hellman indicate he's withdrawing the motion.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, so I'll be clear. So there will be no discussions between now and Thursday or Friday to work out the details?
I think if I was misinformed or maybe I misunderstood, but I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead and please repeat the substitute motion that I proposed.
Your substitute motion was to defer the action to Friday, and it was seconded by Director Oscui.
And that would have allowed us time to sit down and work it out.
Okay, but not, I must have been confused about the budget then. We're going to need to take action on the budget today, correct? Is that the way?
My recommendation is take action on the budget today and then work it out over the next year or 2 years, because it's not the type of thing that we've had a year to discuss this. We had time before that, and you don't make good decisions when you grant additional.
Logistically speaking, are we going to be able to hear the concerns and questions and come up with a bottom line budget? I think if we are able to reach a determination that the bottom line would result in no more than a $2 meter charge, and all the other revenue would need to be cut from the budget on operating expenses, I think that's something that we might be able to move forward with, because I know that there's going to be concerns with having a quorum on the board by Friday. So it's going to be a couple moving pieces that we're going to try to resolve while we have a quorum.
No, I appreciate that, I understand that, but I want to hear from these folks also, give them an opportunity. Is this, so basically what it means are, we're going to adopt the budget based on a $2 fixed meter charge.
And 600,000 total cuts to another.
Total cost, you're going to figure it out, with the additional one position and some other miscellaneous cuts.
Yes.
I still need to hear about the commitment of this board on additional cost-cutting measures.
And again, I proposed one, that the board give up all its travel for the year.
More than that, I still need to figure out the ones that I mentioned. Car allowance. The state audit says, why don't you go with a mileage? Why are we not doing that? It's a state audit recommendation. Let's do that. $200 for telecommunication allowance, that's not reasonable. Reduce that number to a reasonable number. Okay? Cost sharing for APMC. It is not the California rule. It has been determined that EPMC is not a vested right by employees. The formula itself is the 2% or 2.5% or 3%. You can't touch that. But cost contribution by employees towards EPMC, we can't do that. You can't do that. And because this district is not a shop district or organization, you don't have to negotiate it. So that needs to be discussed.
We have a legal opinion country, otherwise we would have done it right.
Well, I have gotten a legal.
But ours prefers to our district. Okay.
Yeah. Again, the vested interest is in the formula itself, but you don't have, as an employee, you don't have a property right to the EPMC portion of it, cost sharing. That can
not to be included in your retirement calculation.
Right. That can be checked. But those are the items, and the other stuff that we have over the course of the last year and a half that I've been privy to, we have discussed, and this board continuously has not made any decisions on it. It doesn't amount to much, I know that. But I'll be damned if I sit in here and I say, I'm going to vote for an additional cut for positions, if as a board we are not courageous enough to reduce our costs by a minimum amount. I won't vote for that.
Substitute motion.
Substitute motion is just what I said. The $2 with additional costs, cuts to come from the board, and we can consider those items, we can consider them today. Take vote on them.
Mr. President, just for clarification, you're considering those factors going into the resolution regarding the retail meter charge so that they are conditions of being able to collect the $2?
No. That's fine as far as a meter charge is concerned. What I suggested is that the budget is going to be approved based on the additional cuts.
Second that motion. And I know there's been numbers kind of floating around, so just for clarification, the board approved $350,000 in cuts last week, and so I think we've heard from 250 to 300. 280 was the amount that would be needed to take it down, the fixed meter charge to $2. Just to be, hopefully in your motion, are you saying an additional $280,000?
No.
Of cuts?
What I'm suggesting is for us to take a look at the slide that you had, that had a list of all of those recommended cuts, the car allowance, all of that. Take a look at it and take a vote today on it. Those will be additional cuts.
That's separate.
That's separate.
The total to get down is exactly what you said, but
there is no reason for this board not to make a decision on the future benefits for future members of the board, for healthcare and other things. No reason.
Mr. President, question for Mr. Squeery. Does that include also a sunset for the meter charge?
Yes.
They would have to include
articulate it, yeah.
Would have to include a sunset.
Right.
Not a 10-year sunset.
3, I think it was.
3 year.
Okay, before we vote on that, I'd like to say a little something. The Signal Hill, I think he is coming, because we have more than one problem here. And one of it is a short-term, one of it is a long-term. And we're only talking about one thing right now. And I think if we were to sit down and talk about this, and the meter charge, and the sunset charge, and the cuts, and all this as one package. We're piecemealing this thing, and we've been doing it for 6 or 9 months, and we've got more discussion today than we've had in the last 2 years. This should have happened 2 years ago, and here we are today doing what we do, and we're worried about 3 days. We can't do it in 3 more days. Why can't we extend the current budget for 30 days? I don't know if that can be done or not. Why couldn't we do something like that? And then we sit down with the Signal Hill guy, who has the only solution that has come up so far in all this, because they've had their side, we've had our side. This is the only solution that we have heard in 2 years that even sounds like a compromise, and we're ignoring it. So I can't vote for any of this stuff. It's piecemeal. It's not total negotiation when you can put it all in one package and make one deal. And no, I can't go for any of this stuff that we're talking about right now.
I'm sorry, Director Hawkins, I'm sorry, you are the Signal Hill person?
I'm the Signal Hill.
David Alshire.
Just make a comment.
Yes.
I thought the substitute motion was really very narrow. It said that we should, you were going to appoint representatives, meet with an ad hoc committee with us, and we'd come up with something by Friday. The discussion about your budget, that is a separate discussion, and I think right now things are a little confused. Obviously, you can, if you want to approve cuts today, that's perfectly fine. Our idea on this period of, we actually aren't trying to resolve all these other things. Our idea was that in this resolution, the resolution would provide that over this period of time, the 3 years, there would be further cuts to try and achieve something in terms of a rate that would be stabilized. We didn't think that could be done in 3 days. So on the motion itself, the substitute motion would just give us this time to talk, and I think these things that are not fleshed out, we would try and flesh out in the resolution, then things that will occur over the 3 years. If you separately want to make further cuts, we're all for that discussion. But I did not want to confuse it. I understand that the general manager wants to, that this is going to be a very intense, short period of time. He wants to get the budget done with. It's obviously in your prerogative to go that way. But right now, I think we were trying to make it clear that as we understood the substitute motion, it was that we have this opportunity to talk. I did throw out the $2 as something the Signal Hill could live with. We've talked to some purveyors that could live with it. I can't represent that all the purveyors could live with $2 in the 3 days or 4 days. We could try and see if we can get a better definition of that. Your representative committee, when they come back here on Friday, would have a much better understanding of what the purveyors can live with or not live with. If you want to put the $2 into your resolution, you can, obviously, but I didn't think that was a part of the substitute motion.
one of the things that you said earlier, and I think this is the 900-pound gorilla in the room that Roy's talking about, is the lawsuit on Prop 26. If we can come to something within this, and this time period, okay, I said in my starting statement that I put out there, long-term and short-term. Short-term is we have the budget today. Long-term, in 5 years, we have a budget that is coming due on our bonds. And we have to be stable, we have to have our credit rating up in order to do this. This is why I say we have to do a negotiation now that puts this whole package together so that we're not doing this again every year. We can do it all now while where everybody's talking and while everybody's sitting down to discuss all these things and run all the numbers on both sides, what we have to do and where we're headed on the long term and the short term so that it gets taken care of at one time.
And Director Hawkins, that is exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly.
We think in the 3 or 4 days, we can kind of put the parameters on this, but there's a longer dialogue that has to occur after that. So we totally support that. One other comment was about these tolling agreements. It is impractical to get tolling agreements from all the purveyors in 3 or 4 days. However, from when you act, there's a limited period of time that people would have to sue you. And I think that during that period of time, you could work on getting tolling agreements. Our idea is to put something into the resolution that commits to what your position would be. We certainly believe that the people that would engage in this discussion with you, we can get tolling agreements quickly from our bodies. I think that your concern with trying to get other bodies committed to this, I think you actually have a little longer window because there's a period of time after you would adopt your resolution that people have to sue, and during that period of time, we would represent that we would certainly reach out to the other purveyors and get them to understand the process that we've gone through and support that. And so I think it would be reasonable within 30 days thereafter to get the tolling agreements, but not by Friday. So those were just, I appreciate your courtesy in letting me speak because I know this was your time to speak, but those were some things that I observed that I thought might help your discussion.
I have a question for our attorney. What's the time frame from which the purveyors have from the date that we could potentially approve the meter charge?
That would basically depend upon the kind of lawsuit they would file and the relief that they would seek, no matter which one.
So you don't have an answer for that right now?
I don't think...
It would be at least 30 days.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, with regard to Attorney Alshire's comments, the complexity of the issues are not going to be solved in 3 days. He's talking about a framework. I think we have a framework right here, right now, to set the parameters for the budget and for the rates going forward. And you can put in a resolution to commit to work, to form a committee of the board to work and do that. I don't see why we couldn't do that right now. I'm very concerned about keeping the budget open, going into the end of the week and things like we have a practical business decision to make going forward. We put a tolling agreement in or whatever the language the attorney had that commits to that. The board agrees to appoint a committee of the board to work with the purveyors long-term on this issue. And I think we can work at it in a much more detailed way to understand, because in the first 3, I know, for example, we have written positions of last time a committee came together with the board. We've got all this, we've daylighted it. Those decisions aren't going to be made quickly. I think there's, again, I really think we need to come out of here today with a budget, regardless of how painful it is, with rates, regardless of how painful it is, and a commitment to work together going forward and solve the problem over the long term. But we have to walk out of here with something today.
So what is your motion?
I'm not make motions. I'm just a hired gun.
Substitute motion.
No, but what is his recommendation here?
A recommendation.
His recommendation is to adopt the budget based on the $2.
You do have a motion which was seconded by Director Arrighi, which was to adopt a budget on a $2 charge, $600,000 in cuts with a 3-year sunset provision.
And the tolling agreement on the litigation.
From the city of Signal Hill, which is the only one that has agreed.
on any of our agencies.
Excuse me?
It would be on any, the total agreement would be on any of our agencies to give them time to actually analyze it. And then the other thing would be that the board appoint a subcommittee. Now, the question is, if Director Skewy came back about contributions of the board to the reductions. And I made one proposal on that. The rest of them are up to the board. I don't have the power to cut things unilaterally.
Do you have a summary of it, Andrew?
It's just a little difficult for me when I'm thinking specifics, getting the specific. If I put in the budget something like you mentioned, the reduction of the car allowance or reduction of travel, it's going to be difficult, I think, putting it in the budget when it's not actually...
No, if the board chooses to reduce their travel, that's a $32,000 reduction in the budget that's specified. If the board chooses to reduce or eliminate its car allowance or reduce or eliminate its communication allowance, they can do that here today, and that's a reduction in the budget.
Yes, if the
board fits into the 600,000.
That's what I'm talking about.
My fear is that there's a reduction that the board hasn't voted on, but then is included in the budget.
No, that hasn't happened.
As long as everything that is in the budget has been approved by the board, then I think everyone's happy.
It's going to make you happy?
Yes.
You showed a surplus bottom line, right? Right? That's going to increase your surplus, whatever you cut. So.
Well, I think it's going I think the cut is going to have a corresponding
cut in revenue.
Cut in revenue. So I think the surplus would stay pretty similar.
That's true too. But can we have, there was a slide that I know that had all of those items in there. Can we have that?
Yeah, Director Skewy, again, the key ones that were on there, the HRA and the pension contributions are ones, again, that we have a legal opinion against it. So I can't, in good conference, recommend to the board that we take it until after the latest decisions on the or we get an independent thing.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let's do that.
But the other ones that we had that were on there had to do with director's travel allowance, car allowance. Those are the three benefits that were in question of the directors.
The telecommunications allowance.
Telecommunications allowance, travel allowance, and the car allowance. Those are the three.
Travel allowance, you mentioned that we have to cut that in order.
That would be a recommendation. I can adopt that. That would contribute $32,000 toward the savings. Because all 8 directors would participate.
I would like for us to take action on those items today.
Mr. President, how about this as a add-on, I guess? I'm not even quite sure what we're on, but if we were to temporarily reduce the benefits to the board by 50% on the items that were just mentioned, as we're working through this, I think would be, and then also still allow, if there are costs above and beyond what is being compensated, that they can submit for reimbursement. But I think that would be an opportunity to reduce the items that were brought up by Director Skewy, advised by General Manager Hunt.
Any other comments?
I second that.
You already have a motion on the floor.
That was an add-on.
Is that an add-on to it?
Yeah.
So the add-on is to also reduce board benefits by 50%.
Right. Temporarily.
In telecom, auto, and travel.
Correct.
Those are the three that I saw.
And then and they can submit for reimbursement if it's above
If the
that.
costs are above and beyond.
Yeah.
Needs to be demonstrated.
Does that include all 4 items on the recommended motion as revised by this motion?
Can you summarize the motion that's being considered, please?
We have adopt the budget, a $2 charge, $600,000 in cuts with the 3-year sunset provision. If I'm correct, the tolling agreement, form a subcommittee. Also reduce benefits to, board benefits by 50%, in this case, car allowance, communications, and travel, if I'm not mistaken. And allow for reimbursement with proof of visit extraordinary costs.
Okay.
Okay.
And approval of these 4 items
Just the
as
budget.
revised?
The first is the budget, the others are after that. But I guess the process of budget would be to approve the rate study, approve and authorize a resolution establishing the meter charge, approve the fiscal year budget with those conditions, and authorize the rates for the year. Okay. As amended.
In order to approve the budget, do we have to approve the water rate study?
I don't, but the reason we'd want to approve the water rate study is the legal basis for the fixed charge. You want to approve the fixed charge, and then that's the legal basis for establishing the fixed charge, which pays for the budget. So it all ties together, unfortunately.
Said another way, the resolution for rates that the board approved approximately a year ago at this time, that's the current rates that are authorized, and they do continue into the fiscal 2020. However, if we approve a budget without rates, revisions as proposed in this motion, there's going to be some incongruity there, and it's going to be difficult to, I think, publish a budget without updated rates, if that makes sense.
Okay, I got a question for Andrew. So if we're authorizing the $2 meter charge, that's an additional $634,000 added to the revenues, correct? Roughly.
I believe it's
It's a reduction.
It's going to be a reduction of...
Well, I mean, if we approve the meter charge.
Yeah, as opposed to. Yeah.
Correct. So that's $634,000 of revenues. Can that not be calculated into the rates and then just go forward by saying the adopted rates will hold true for the remaining 3 years of the sunset clause? Any further budget adjustments will have to be made through a variety of other sources. So that way we can just basically stabilize the rates. I think this is what the intent is, correct?
Yeah.
So if the purveyors are agreeing to a $2 charge that we're going to hold to, anything other than pass-through costs should also be held, right? And then we just figure out some type of way to manage our business from day to day with not increasing the cost of water or admin charges or anything else, but live within our means. I think that's something that's reasonable.
The only thing that changes in the rate schedule is the fixed charge. That's all we're changing in the rate schedule.
And everything else should remain the same.
So there's no problem. This can go like this.
So for simplicity, what we're doing is we're taking action on the fixed rate and the commodity rate, and we're holding that for 3 years until we can get a handle on our day-to-day activity and budget.
The only thing is that the rate study
Less pass-through costs from that.
assumes a 4% increase each
The
year.
rate study is a projection after the first year. We're only adopting the first year.
Correct, but it's up to the board, but the rate study does have that 4%.
4%, I mean,
Yeah, every year they have to approve the rates. It's just a projection, Andrew.
But if it's capped to $2, then there's no ability to increase it.
Then we
That's
deal with
just-
it next year.
The whole point is go through the exercise, working with them to come up with a long-term solution.
And the sooner we do that, the sooner the cap on the tube is removed and something replaces it. That's fine.
and for discussion purposes, I think that gets the ball rolling in the correct direction, because now we're going to see that we're not counting on that increase that you have in your rate study, that we're going to need to look for other opportunities to either fine-tune our budget and live within our means, correct?
Just one more. I know the general counsel added 3 different items to be added to the
Resolution.
item number 2. Is that a part of the motion too?
Compound motions are certainly add a lot of
Andrew,
confusion.
just leave it be. Let the attorneys figure it out, okay? Let's read the motion and see if we have everything covered by the attorney.
So I have a first by Director Escalante, seconded by Director Origi, to adopt a budget, go with a $2 service charge, $600,000 in cuts, 3-year sunset provision, tolling agreements, form a subcommittee of the purveyors, reduce board benefits by 50%, which includes car allowance, communications, travel, allow for reimbursement if there's an extraordinary cost, and adopt all the 4 motions here before you for the board.
Is that covered?
I don't think they were approved.
As revised.
I'm not sure that they were approving all 4 items that are...
But we'd like them to approve them all because that's what we have to do.
I understand, but was that your motion? To include the rate study, et cetera? I understood it to be just the budget.
We can approve the rate study because I don't have a problem with approving the rate study. Does any other board have a problem with approving the rate study? It's just a document that we're using to guide future decisions, correct? If we need to modify based upon changing circumstances, we will and we can, correct?
Yes.
And then on the motion for the establishing the fixed charge, it's for a 3-year period.
Correct, $2.
Yeah, $2 for a 3-year period, so it's a little
The
change.
resolution attached would be revised to
Yeah.
reflect that.
But to reflect that. And then we have the budget, and then we have the rates. And we're-
Mr. President, can we proceed with the roll call?
Roll call. Mr. President, roll call.
Yeah, roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Heldman?
Yes.
Director Arrighi?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Scooey?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No?
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
No.
President Apodaca?
No.
Motion does not pass.
So we don't have a budget, right?
Well, can we-
So now, I'm clear.
Is there any substitute, Director Camacho Rodriguez or anybody?
I just voted, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So what are we gonna do, no budget?
No budget.
And no meter charge.
Can we take a 5-minute recess?
Yeah.
I would do that, everybody.
Right there. 5-minute recess?
5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, it appears the board is back in session. You've given me the floor. I think I'll hand it back to you.
The motion failed, I guess. The question, is there another motion?
What is a motion now or proposed or?
There has to be another motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Director Hawkins, you want to give us the motion?
I would just like to make a motion that we extend the budget for 30 days, adjusted for season, because we do buy water in July. We adjust it for season, and we get 30 days, and we put an ad hoc committee. The president picks an ad hoc committee to sit down and talk with the attorneys and some of this, so that we can get some ideas to bring back, and hopefully we'll get this done in time so that everybody's board meetings can hear our solutions or our suggestions on some of this. I'll make that as a motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Chacon? Director Heldman?
No.
Director Arrighi?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Scooey?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We have to appoint a ad hoc committee as part of this?
Yeah, I'll do that. Now or should we do it later? You're going to be a part of it?
We should do it now.
Okay.
That's the president's, under the administrative code, that's the president's responsibility to appoint an ad hoc committee.
Okay, discussion then?
I would like to suggest,
I volunteer, Mr. President.
Okay. And I suggest Director Hawkins join you.
Okay.
Okay? And how many we need on that? 3?
3. Mr. Hillman would be interested?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Hillman. That's fine. We have the...
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. What are you going to take up next?
Yeah, we had, thanks. We go back to the consent calendar.
Item 5, do I have a motion to approve minutes?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Heldman?
Yes.
Director Arrighi?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
what was the motion again?
To approve the consent calendar?
Actually, before we get to that, I wanted to pull a couple of items. From the consent calendar, I'm sorry, there was a... Yeah, so I want to pull item, let's see. Item number 11. And item number 17.
Move the balance of the calendar.
Second. Roll call.
Council, we were in the middle of roll call for approval of the consent calendar. Items were pulled, and then there was a substitute motion. Do we finish what we
Yeah,
started?
actually, I think we were a little distracted because of the, there were individuals that were walking out, and so I would like us to reconsider that.
There's been a motion to reconsider. That should be voted on first.
So who made the motion, Director Vasquez, to
Yes, I know Director Hawkins walked away. Apparently, we moved on the consent calendar before we could get an opportunity to pull items. I think there was a little bit of kind of chatter and movement because of the
audience member.
Yeah, the audience, yeah. So I didn't get a chance to pull two items that I am interested in discussing a little further that are on the consent calendar. And so there was a motion that was made prematurely that the secretary started taking votes on. And
So what do you need?
so I want
If I
to...
pull my vote back, will that open it back up?
Yeah, I think we were going to need to...
There's already, you indicated you wanted to pull numbers 11 and 17, and I believe Director Origi asked to consider for the rest of the balance of the, to be
Right.
considered.
Okay, so would you... Oh, okay, so we're approving what items?
No, so because you requested that we pull items 11 and 17, Director Origi moved to approve the balance of the consent calendar.
Okay.
So you may speak on your items.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything else to pull on your side? Over there? And over here? No?
Nope. Second to my motion.
We need a second to your motion, yes.
Second that. Okay. Second, yeah.
And the motion is to approve, to approve the remainder of the calendar with the exception of
11 and 17.
11, 17. Okay, thank you.
Director Chacon? Director Heldman?
Yes?
Director Origi? Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes. Okay, item 11.
Yeah, I just want to get a little more information about that.
So,
Yeah, can you just give the presentation about that?
oh, okay. Yes, Sandy's here. I'll have her take over.
Thank you. Mhm.
Agenda items. I do. Okay. Good afternoon, directors. So this is part of our monthly update to the board on the status of the Prop 84 grant. The report that we submitted provides an update as far as the amount of audits that are required by the grant, which are 57. Central Basin has completed 21 of those.
Would you go into who they are?
As far as the 21 that have been completed? Okay. So we've completed audits at the city of Downey, the city of Norwalk. Each of those cities received 5 audits as well as 5 retrofits. We also did 5 at Los Nietos Unified School District, which is one of our disadvantaged communities. And I'm doing this off of memory.
Los Nietos is the city of Whittier, right?
Is unincorporated Whittier.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes. And then the ones that are listed here in the city of Bell, which is also another disadvantaged community, these were also completed. The total with the ones located in the city of Bell would provide our update of 27 out of the 57 water audits and retrofits that are required by the grant. We're currently working with Paramount Unified School District, Compton Unified School District, and Linwood Unified School District. We have completed retrofits and audits for Compton and Linwood as part of the DOE grant, a DWR grant that we had previously completed. And that's where we are as far as the grant's concerned. And we continue to work with other school districts and cities, especially in our disadvantaged areas, so that they can utilize this funding and this opportunity.
Okay, excellent, thank you. You have done such a phenomenal job with this project. I really would like to see us do a little bit more information sharing, whether it's through public, the creation of videos that we can share on social media, maybe a report to the cities or school districts or before, their bodies. During this whole discussion about rate increases and even the idea of a meter charge, there's a lot of talk from a certain sector of the purveyor community that says that there's no benefit, right? There's no benefit. They're not getting anything. This is a prime example of the benefits that they receive, that they're not paying anything for. And so I think it's critical that, we as an agency do our part to really drill down on those benefits and inform, the entities of what we're doing. And this is just one. We have the turf removal program, the toilet replacement program, so many services, so many programs and services that folks are benefiting from that I believe, we can do a better job of advertising. Thank you. Yes.
Sandy, please agendize that for the next Water Resource Committee and take it through the board since it involves a commitment of resources.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
For the 17th, do you want?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve that item, number 11.
Second.
Director Chacon? Director Heldman?
Yes.
Director Urigi?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes. What's your other one?
Yes, the next one is the Real Estate Services Request for Proposals Update.
Let me just refer that right now to Director Hawkins, and he can give us, since he chairs the committee. I'm on the committee, but he chairs it. You want to tell us about the real estate?
This, we put out a request for a proposal for somebody to represent us in the real estate side. It was posted for how long?
It's actually been reposted. It was
No,
posted in
before.
April for a little over 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, and we got one small response. So I've had several people call me on the real estate side and said they couldn't find it. Would we repost it so that they could have an opportunity to issue their proposal? Hopefully, we're in that stage right now, and I think that's what this is all about, is trying to get more people interested in our building and working with us on this sale as well as a future. But we don't have that person now, and that's why I wanted to get the proposal extended. We're doing it for another 2 or 3 weeks?
It would go for 3 weeks after the 4th of July holiday, the Monday following the 4th of July. The Tuesday
So if
following.
anybody calls you about how to do this, it'll be on our website now, because that was the other complaint I had, that they couldn't find it. So hopefully we're going to get more results from that now.
Do you want to let the board know why we're doing this, in case they don't know why we're...
Well, part of it is I don't want to be reactionary. I want to be ahead of the game on all this, because we've already had 2 notices that this building's only going to be here for 5 more years. We had 5 years, now we got a second 5 years. Caltrans is going to take it. So instead of waiting until the last minute when they want to take it and we have to run out and try to find a building, I'd like to be a little ahead of the game, and we find somebody that would buy this, and we find some place to go, and we can downsize if we need to at the same time. So there's several benefits as long as we get this started. And all of it will come to the board. I'm just trying to get the action, get people interested and get them responding to us right now.
Okay, so this is not an approval to sell the building?
No.
Okay, this is just information, we're putting information out. Now, with respect to Caltrans, expanding the 5 freeway, obviously they have the right, of eminent domain, which they will exercise in order to acquire the land that they need. Have there been any discussions with them about, maybe purchasing the land now? I have some experience with that whole process as a former council member, and I know that they actually not only pay market value for the building, but they will also pay for relocation fees and other expenses that arise from moving, or relocating to another entity. So is that a discussion that is being had by the board with the state of California?
No, it hasn't, but it can.
Okay.
What we were just trying to do is try to find somebody right now, but that can happen as well as we'd like to talk to different cities that might have excess property that we could purchase or work with them as well. We haven't got that far yet.
Okay, and then also, we have, and we are talking about the need to generate revenue. I mean, we have an entire first floor that really is not used. The directors, we rarely use our offices. Maybe we can lease the space.
Well, the reason why, to save time, Director Hawkins can give you everything that we've been doing. I'm on it. I can tell you all kinds of stuff or questions that you might have.
Yeah.
And he's on the committee with us, so it saves us time.
Okay, yeah, I would like us to consider leasing the space until we make the sale.
One of these reasons, we haven't know what you're talking about, we're looking to hire that person to go do that for us.
Oh, excellent.
And that's why the RFP out for them, and then we can tell them what we want and let them track it down.
Okay.
Yes, Director Skewes.
Just quickly, the option of cost saving through renting a portion of the facility was on the general manager's list last year. I remember that.
And we did not find any takers. We had a couple of people who showed interest.
As far as the Caltrans and this building and the others, Metro has budgeted funding for the I-5 in 2038, 2036, 38, that. So nothing is going to happen between now and then.
Until, for 2038? So nothing will happen until 2038?
Yeah.
I think 5 years before they'll start negotiating with the right.
2038.
So the EIR has not been done. They haven't funded the EIR. If the EIR hasn't been done, that means that the right-of-way take hasn't been discussed.
But the reason it's become a crisis is because this building has a lot of work that has to be done, or they've been charging us, and we're trying to save money if we can and find a better facility.
Yeah, and I believe that, that conversation should be had as an entire board. Obviously this building is paid for free and clear. And so we're not, the only expenses, in fact, I would love to have a report on the expenses that we have incurred over the past, 5 years. So that we can, see, okay, is this worth it?
Director Hawkins, he's a broker anyway, and he'll help you with all that, because we want to get going. We got 2
yeah, no, I would like to re-agendize this, at the next board meeting so that we can kind of flush through all that as well.
What you're talking about, we want to put in the RFP. So that he does what we say, and then he reports back. And then he can report back once a month or however we require as what you're talking about, the work that goes on, because we don't have a staff set up.
We need to move on.
That's why we need whoever applies advertised to RFP. So they'll be our person, our contact person for all.
We're beyond the consent.
I see.
And you'll be requesting them and direct them and whatever we want to do.
Okay, excellent. So he'll come to our board meeting and give a report. Okay, so I'll expect, as soon as we bring that person on board, for them to come before the board so that we can have these discussions. Thank you.
Just one additional comment onto that. I'll be very brief. Director Hawkins mentioned somebody reached out to him. Additionally, we've posted this to do some more targeted advertisement to real estate websites because the comment I got back most often is it wasn't seen. Our traditional advertisement does not hit this type of specialized service.
Okay.
Thank you.
And take it back through the Admin and Finance Committee where it belongs and end up to the board in the process. Okay.
Item 18.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You need to vote on 17.
Second, roll call.
Director Chacon, Director Heldman.
Yes.
Director Riggi.
Yes.
Director Hawkins.
Yes.
Director Schooley.
Yes.
Director Vasquez.
Yes?
Director Camacho Rodriguez.
Yes.
Director Blanca.
Yes. Item 18. Is that who we,
That's the LIBOR settlement, yes.
Yes, good afternoon. So this item represents the recommended board approval of the proposed Citibank LIBOR settlement. I believe this item did through committee. The district's previous variable rate debt in the 2008 COPs, which were paid off in November of 18, had a corresponding interest rate swap with Citibank. The net effect of this was to synthetically fix the district's interest rate at 3.3%. We then received variable interest rates based on LIBOR. Citibank was accused by various attorney generals in 42 different states of misproprieties, in essence exaggerating that rate. And so they did investigation and made a $95 million settlement fund, of which our portion is $171,000. We contacted district staff, Nossman. They strongly recommend approval of this because there's no litigation fees extra for the district, and there's a settlement amount that's in essence guaranteed. If the board approves it, the district also reached out to the deputy attorney general for the state of California, and he expects this resolution to occur in September. So maybe with a few potential delays, we'll hopefully get this by the end of the calendar year.
Mr. President, move to approve staff's recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about this. What is the monetary loss to Central Basin?
So
because of the cheating that went on.
That's kind of a difficult question to ask. Because
it's a difficult, no, well, it's just
difficult to answer.
It's difficult to answer, rather.
Okay. Can we quantify it? Because,
No.
I mean, we obviously know what, that there were some playing around with overcharging and inflated interest rates.
In theory, the calculation...
They based it on the LIBOR rate, right? On
Right.
LIBOR's rate? So what is LIBOR's rate and what was our rate? So I think we can calculate it.
No, Director.
LIBOR changes monthly over the course of...
Director, there was $6 million in legal and accounting fees to come up with this settlement amount. We don't have the technical ability right now to calculate. What they were doing was modifying the LIBOR
I
rate
understand, I read
slightly
the
on a
agenda
daily
items,
basis.
sir. Yeah.
And we don't have the information or the way to calculate that.
Okay.
So it's a general class action settlement.
So...
The way to calculate it would be easy if we knew what the difference was.
Right.
However, that's the problem, is that no one has said, hey, here's the spread, or it was overstated by 0.5%. So there's no real way. In fact, we asked the deputy state attorney general, how was this calculated? They hired a consultant. They went through and calculated it by the average maturity, and then...
So what was that?
Well, each entity is different, and they're not able to provide that information because some of the entities are not public agencies like ours. We
Right.
could probably request that information publicly. However, there's private parties. And so the way to calculate it is not being disclosed to any of the parties like ourselves to re-verify.
Was there a range? I mean, these numbers didn't come out of thin air. So there were numbers that were used to calculate the $95 million settlement. So what are those numbers?
Again, we're not privy to those. I've asked that question in probably 5 different manners or top 5 different ways on that phone call, and there's no way for us to recalculate or double check their figures.
Okay, what were the interest rates at the time?
It varies.
No. I'm asking what Central Basin's interest rates were. I'm not asking for everyone else. I'm asking what were the interest rates that Central Basin was paying at the time to Citibank?
It was actually receiving.
Or receiving.
We were paying fixed, approximately 3.3%, and it just varied over
Historical data
that
for
time.
LIBOR will show that, right? If you go back whatever number of years.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry, the historical data that you can get for LIBOR will show that, right? Each month, what was the rate?
It's the published LIBOR rate.
Right.
Do you have that?
I don't have that with me right now.
Okay, and the other question is, are we still doing business with Citibank?
We are not.
Okay. Let me see. Do you know who the other public entity plaintiffs were?
I called the finance department of Metropolitan
For
Water
California, I guess I'll minimize it because I know there were lots of...
So it would be in essence that we did a web search. There weren't any entities, but I kind of had a figure. I kind of had an inkling rather that Citibank did business with Metropolitan. So I called their finance department, asked what their proposed action or recommended action. They hadn't published the board agenda, but they were going to, in essence, do the same thing as ourselves and take the settlement, proposed settlement, and recommend approval.
Okay, so we don't know who the other plaintiffs, public plaintiffs are?
We do not.
Yeah. Do we have are there any other financial impacts on these interest rates, or did that go away when we refinance?
You're correct. When the swap terminated, when we refinanced in November of 18, there was no further impact. In addition, this period was only from 2000. Now I'm reaching back. It was a 3-year period, I think. So it's in the memo. With the,
I think it was a 10-year period. It says 2008, and it terminated in 2018.
Yes, but the settlement period was just for, I believe, 2007 to 2010. It was something.
2007 to 2010.
I believe it was a 4-year period.
2007 to 2010. You know, when I was reading this agenda item, it brought back some of the issues that we have had to deal with at this agency, with our credit ratings being reduced and our rating officers telling us that we need to do certain things in order to keep our bond rating. And I was it was a red flag for me that we need to, as board members, we need to look a little closer at these deals when they come before our board.
Item 19.
Thank you.
No, we have to, second, right? We need a second.
Motion for 18?
Yeah. I move to approve the staff's recommendation. We need a second and then a roll call.
Director Chacon, Director Heldman?
Yes.
Director Arrighi?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Escudi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 19?
No, 19's already been addressed.
Item 20 is.
And for the record,
President, I need to
Director
myself, the
Arrighi is
next
going to
three agenda
recuse
items
himself.
pertain to San Gabriel Valley Water Company, which is the benefactor of the recycled water system. So I'll recuse myself.
Thank you. And we had several speakers to speak on items 20 or 21 or 22, statute of which, so if they are still here, if Yvonne Watson would like to speak now.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Yvonne Martinez-Watson. I am the Chair of the Environmental Justice Committee for the Sierra Club Angeles chapter. My first comment is, I was looking for this agenda. I've been been ill for quite a few months. And the link that is on your website is broken, or I'm sorry, when you try to download the file, I kept getting that the file was damaged. So the first time I've ever looked at these papers was when I was sitting right here. So I apologize if I'm a little out of breath. I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as possible. Sierra Club got involved with this issue back in May of 2016 when I first started coming here before you. I noticed on that first page, 202, it says that the developer, Toll Brothers, is working with the United States Fish and Wildlife. Well, if you look at the letter that was submitted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it's extremely short. And I actually contacted the person, her name is Christine Medak, back in January of this year. And she did not seem to be aware of this project. And I've been told by another person from Montebello that she did not actually get the link to these documents until he sent them the link. So I find it kind of curious that the lead person working on environmental issues for the Montebello Hills Specific Plan seemed to have been unaware of this, and yet Toll Brothers claims to be working with them. So I would just throw that out there. I have been telling you from the beginning this project needs a supplemental EIR, not a mitigated negative declaration or a negative declaration. And it seems like some of the commenters that submitted letters in writing, including California Fish and Wildlife, agree with me. Because when you separate these projects, this small pump station from the greater Montebello Hills Specific Plan, that's segmentation. And that should not be happening, because you have to look at the total cumulative effects of the entire project. So I would really urge you to please read the comment letters for yourselves, look at what the responses were from your own Central Basin staff, and see, were these things actually mitigated? Were these things actually addressed? If you look at, they're talking about a mitigation monitoring reporting program. This is the same mitigation reporting program that I was looking for when I started coming here and asking, are you looking at the same thing that was submitted from Montebello Hills? And according to that first page on 202, yes, you are using the same mitigation program. Well, if you're using the same mitigation program as the MHSP, then of course it should have been covered under the MSHP. So again, there should have been a supplemental environmental impact report. Because what you're doing is, City of Montebello was the lead agency before. And what you're doing is you're taking over the responsibility as lead agency and letting City of Montebello off the hook. And that is exactly what I think California Fish and Wildlife said. If there's a question about who is the lead agency, then who is responsible ultimately to make sure that the mitigation program is being followed? There's so much in here that just does not make any sense. I wish I'd had more thorough time to review this. One of the big things I noticed on page 242, I'll just read it, specific impact. This is from Fish and Wildlife, California. California Fish and Wildlife is concerned that the totality of impacts to California gnatcatcher at this location is being piecemealed in its environmental review and mitigation analysis. In addition, the DMND requires a developer of the Montebello Hills Specific Plan, instead of the project proponent, to mitigate for project impacts. CDFW is concerned that mitigation obligations will not be enforced or implemented if another entity can be held responsible instead of the project proponent. They go on to cite evidence of impacts would be significant. They said that the mitigation is unclear if the oil field was included. I know that there's another point in here where I'm racing ahead. At one point, this project is going to be located at Montebello Boulevard and Lincoln. And right across the street, actually kitty corner to where your project site is, there is an oil well operated by Southern California Gas Company. So I would think that would be within, a quarter mile of the project site. I did not see that listed in any of your documents. You need to be aware that Southern California Gas Company has had major issues with gas leakage in the city of Montebello, natural gas leakage. So there may be, since it's that close to that well, you may encounter some sort of natural gas problem. The Montebello Hills Pacific Plan itself, which calls for 1,200 homes in the middle of the oil field, each one of those proposed buildings, the homes, will have to have a vapor intrusion barrier underneath the foundation. I did not see such a thing recommended for your project. My time is up?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman? Oh, I'm sorry, we have other public speakers on?
Yes, we do.
Yes, okay. So
Is
just
Linda Strong? Linda Strong still here? Yes, okay.
Well, very much so.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for having me here. I want first to comment on something I think it was my grandfather told me. He was born in 1879. He said, when you're in a hole and you're sinking down, stop digging. This entity, Central Basin Municipal Water District, has money problems. I've just been sitting here listening to, 2 hours of that? This particular item, item 21 that I'm speaking on, which is a proposed agreement between this entity and Sentinel Peak Resources, proposes for this entity to spend $667,142, I think it said, dollars out of your reserves, in order to put a recycled water pipeline up part of Montebello Boulevard to supply who? One entity only, not a bunch of community places that would benefit from the water. No, one would-be developer. If that were to happen, it seems to me that this one beneficiary ought to be paying this $667,000 and change. The prior would-be developer of this Montebello Hills oil field that pumps 1,700 barrels of oil a day and intends to continue indefinitely doing that, along with significant amounts of natural gas. That prior would-be developer, Cook Hill Properties LLC, planned to split the cost of the recycled water pipeline. Furthermore, that prior recycled water pipeline was 10,000 feet, if I remember correctly, all the way to the top of the hill to where the mall is. This only goes about a third, I think 2,260 odd feet, just up to Jefferson Boulevard from Lincoln. The prior cost was supposed to be $500,000. Cook Hill was going to pay half of that. Now, the full $667,000 and change would come out of your reserves for a pipeline that is approximately 1/3 to 1/4 the length. That prior plan was something like 2015. ¿Qué pasó? What happened in this short amount of time? There's so many questions. Furthermore, this entity, Central Basin, would be advancing money for, presumably, they think, getting money back later on when recycled water would be provided. But there's a few hitches in the get-along. I tell you, 12, 13 years ago, they were saying the entire thing would be done by something like 2010. Then it was 2012, blah, blah, so forth, and so on. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened for all sorts of environmental and other reasons. This particular Montebello Hills oil field has a significant amount of sagebrush, chaparral, etc. It has suffered 2 severe fires in the past 7 years. The first fire was in 2012, if I remember correctly. I think it was July 9, 2012. 5-alarm fire, 14 fire departments responding. The second fire was in August 16, 2015, if I remember correctly, the Lincoln fire. That was 65 acres that burned up. I'm telling you, you're taking a bad bet here. Thank you.
And one last speaker, Jim Flournoy.
Thank you, Jim Flournoy. Linda said some of the things I was going to say, so I'll say something a little bit different. The pump station contractor, and I'm just going to talk about the pump station here for a moment, is the oil company. The oil company is also the developer of the Montebello Hills Pacific Plan, and essentially Central Basin is hoping to get the assets of this pump station and the recycled water system throughout the hills as an asset to show on our books here, which is a good thing. The problem is that we just heard that we're not getting recycled water maybe for medians, and the Sangro Valley Water Company doesn't really want to deliver recycled water to the common areas of the condo project, which is required in the Montebello Hills specific plan that was approved. So there may not be enough, what is left to supply recycled water to, if those two things are taken off the books, is just a 4-acre pocket park. And as Linda says, this may not happen for a long time. Now, if we build a water line up Montebello Boulevard and it's not used for several years, the income coming is put way off in the future. We may get some for grading, but it turns out that the developer wants to put in a temporary skid-mounted pump for an interim thing, so we won't even have $1 million asset sitting on the books for a permanent pumping station. And, you know, they may decide later that they're not going to do recycled water at all, pick up their skid-mounted pump and say, okay, you have a pipeline up Montebello Boulevard. I don't know what you're going to do with it. The thing is that essentially the oil companies got Central Basin to act as a front for their own private pumping station, which they're going to pay all the costs for and everything else. And they're doing this so that they don't have to do a subsequent environmental impact report for the rest of their project, of which the Fish and Wildlife says they're making significant changes. They don't want to open up their environmental impact report. So what do you get by fronting the environmental study for this private pump project is you get to spend $700,000 on a pipeline essentially to nowhere. You know, I would think, as Linda said, that the oil company should pay for the pipeline, and then when they get doing water, you get that as an asset in any case. So I was going to say some more, but if this is going to be, I'll write it up and send it in to you. And I appreciate your consideration here.
The time's up.
Yeah, perfect.
Mr. Chairman? Oh.
I was just going to mention that these three items, 20, 21, and 22, are related, and the staff reports will be coming now, which may answer many of the questions, but if the directors have any questions now on this, we'll be glad to answer them.
Yeah, I would like to defer this item. I would like to make a motion to defer items 20, 21, and 22 to our next regular board meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
As the director of that district, again, you?
No comment right now.
Roll call.
Director Chacon, Director Hellman,
No.
Director Origi, Director Hawkins,
Yes.
Director Oscui,
No.
Director Vasquez,
Yes?
Director Camacho Rodriguez,
Yes.
President Apodaca.
Yes.
You only have 4 votes. Motion failed.
Okay, so
Item 23.
this is item 20's presentation now. Well, item 20 is the environmental document. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, since there was no action, can we just move forward and put this on the next agenda? I mean, there wasn't an agreement, so.
Sorry, I thought the motion was to defer it, and it failed.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
Should I do the presentation? Okay. So this item is for to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act requirements for the construction of the pipeline and pump station. The slide that's up on the board, it shows the blue as the pipeline and the highlighted is the pump station site. Rincon Consultants prepared the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. The public review was for a period of 30 days and it ended on June 3rd. Rincon and Analyst Miller's here as well in case the board has any questions from Rincon. They put together the final initial study on mitigating negative declaration, and as part of the final report, Rincon provided responses to the comment letters we received. We received a total of 8 comment letters, 6 of them within the public comment period, and 2 of them were outside of the public comment period. The letters we received were from the Gavileño Band of Missions Indians, Quiche Nation, South Coast Air Quality Management District, the California Department of Transportation, Citizens for Open and Public Participation. They submitted 2 letters, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The 2 letters that came after, it was from the United States Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Toxic Substances Control. A mitigation monitoring and reporting program was also put together. The mitigation monitoring and reporting program is required to be adopted to ensure compliance with mitigation measurements during project implementation. With the implementation of the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, any potential impacts to the environment will be reduced to a less than significant level. The next steps for CEQA compliance are for the board to approve the project and to adopt the final initial study mitigating negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, as well for district staff to file a notice of determination within 5 days after board adoption of the initial study and mitigating negative declaration. Now, in order to file a notice of determination and complete the CEQA process, the board is required to take an action on the project. The process to complete CEQA compliance requires the district to approve the Montebello Hills Recycled Water Pipeline and Pump Station project. Approving the project doesn't approve any other contracts with the developer or the city's contractor. Those contract agreements will be addressed under separate board agenda items. And that concludes my presentation.
I might ask one thing on this. The approval of the environmental document, you said doesn't approve the project or anything. What is the alternative? The developer said if he doesn't have recycled water, he would go with potable water. So what's in the public's best interest here to negotiate a deal where we provide recycled water and reduce the pressure on the potable system, or have them provide potable? The developer has that option of going once he's required to make a good faith effort to get recycled water. If he doesn't get recycled water, he could go ahead. So we're doing this environmental to clear the deck so that the board can make a decision one way or the other.
Quick question, Roman.
Yes.
What were the comments by AQMD and Caltrans?
From which one? I'm sorry.
AQMD, South Coast Air Quality Management District, and Caltrans, Department of Transportation?
So the comment, let me see the responses to comments.
Page 208.
From AQMD.
You have that? Otherwise, I'll give it to you, Roman.
Hold up. It's page 3 of the responses to comments, and that is...
page 2. Do you need them? I'll bring them.
No, I have them. I have it. So, AQMD, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, I'll start reading it. The commentary states the use of Tier 3 construction equipment was not required as a mitigation measure, project design feature, or condition of approval for the proposed project in the draft initial study M&D, mitigating negative declaration. The commentary requests that air quality modeling assumptions be consistent with the proposed project. The commenter recommends the inclusion of a mitigation measure requiring the use of Tier 4 construction equipment and provides sample language. The air quality modeling incorrectly included the use of Tier 3 construction equipment, even though this is not a mitigation measure. Project design feature or condition of approval for the proposed project. To address this comment, the CAE MOD model was revised to remove the use of Tier 3 construction equipment. Text from Section 3, Air Quality, and Table 5 of the Draft Initial Study Mitigating Negative Declaration were revised as shown below. These revisions do not change the significance of the project's construction-related air quality impacts, which remain less than significant. Do I continue reading?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I got it. Thanks.
And the Department of Transportation, which is page 212.
Just the gist of it, not the whole thing. Just.
Yeah, and I guess, Annalise, would you like to just... Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Annalise Miller. I'm with Rincon Consultants, and we prepared the document. The Caltrans letter was simply a letter stating the nearest state facility to the project site is State Route 60. They also recommended that the district schedule its deliveries of oversized material project site to off-peak hours. It was a recommendation, and as we discussed in the draft M&D, there are no construction-related traffic impacts that would necessitate this. So it is possible for you to consider this as part of the project, but it is not necessary to mitigate an environmental impact.
Thank you. That's it?
That's it.
Move to approve staff's recommendation?
Second. Roll call.
Just to confirm, who did the second? Director Apodaca or Kalman?
Director Chacon, Director Heldman,
Yes.
Director Origi, Director Hawkins,
Yes.
Director Oscui,
Yes.
Director Vasquez,
No?
Director Camacho Rodriguez,
No.
President Apodaca.
Yeah.
Motion does not pass.
Okay, since the motion did not pass, there's no sense dealing with the next two items on the agenda, which have to do with it. It also means that failure to approve this means that all of our work to date is done on this, and we can't proceed with the project that has been approved by the board all the way up to this time. I don't know how we come back for this. I don't understand the issue, but it didn't seem to be any major. But what happens now is the project will go back. We'll tell the developer, we can't provide you recycled water. And he will say, great, I'm out of doing the recycled water system. I save millions of dollars. I'll supply it with potable. That's where we'll be.
Mr. Chairman, I initially made the motion to defer action on these three items because I need more time to do research. I'm not against this project. I need more time to drill down on the issues and do a little bit more homework to firm up some of the unanswered questions that
And I appreciate that, Director. That was a good suggestion.
I would like, to reconsider that at our next board meeting, these three items at our next board
My
meeting.
concern, Director, is that if you recall in our prior discussions upon this, there's a moratorium on construction in Montebello Road coming up. The only way that we can fit this project in a 5-year period is by doing it concurrently with the work of their contractor, which is the subsequent agreements we have on here. That's the reason they're tied together. By failure to act now, we miss that window. We have a 5-year delay that we can work in that road again. So
Or you can get an exemption to dig into a newly paved street, which is never a good public policy, and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to put pipelines, right?
That's the deal. But I mean,
but who wants to go there, right?
We're trying to do things as efficiently as possible. And this is.
Well, since we are going to have I believe, a special meeting to consider the meter charge, these might be items that we can consider that same day.
I don't think we called it. I think we had a 1-month budget extension.
So that's 30 days?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Again, we'll come back, and how much time would you need, Director? Would 2 weeks do, or something like that?
2 weeks is good, yeah. I mean, I've spent a lot of time looking at our budget issues, the Ralph Tellis report, and I'm just simply not prepared to vote on this issue right now.
Okay, so I will see if I can get the developer and the contractor to hold everything for 2 weeks, and we do this 2 weeks from today.
And we also need to look at the issues of, for not only this item, but item number 22. I am interested in meeting with the building trades around some questions about the project labor agreement.
That's right.
We've had issues in the past with our agency not complying with the project labor agreement, or contractors that are working for us. So I'm interested in meeting with them to make sure that we are complying. And so that's what I need time for.
Mr. General Manager, who's going to be doing the construction?
Sequel Contractors.
And they are a contractor under contract with?
The City of Montebello.
So it doesn't have anything to do with us, right?
Unfortunately, the City of Montebello doesn't want to use its contingency allowance under the public bidding act of 25%. This would be 12%. They don't want to commit that because they think there may be change orders, so we'd have to contract directly with them, in which case it will become an issue. I talked to the building trades actually on Friday, and they're trying to get back to me with a resolution.
Thank you.
And with respect to the expenditure of funds, this is a loan to the city of Montebello, right?
No, that was the pump station, ma'am. That's a totally separate project.
Okay. This is why I need more time so that I can review it.
And again, as you recall, we're building the pipeline, the 650,000 or 670. The developer is to build a pump station up to $1 million and the distribution system, which is a couple of $1 million. And the total recycled water sale, if you recall, permanently, contrary to Project Comments, permanently would be 240 acre feet, and during construction would be about 440 acre feet.
Okay.
So.
Also, if just quick thing, if I may, also by the board approving this project, it would allow us to file the notice of I forgot the actual language for it, but we need it for 30 days. So if we were able to approve that, we could file it with the LA County, the notice of determination for this document. We could file it with the LA County Clerk's office, and the statute of limitations, excuse my language, will start for the next 30 days. Otherwise, let's say we wait until the next month, it gets approved, we have to wait 30 days before we start construction as well.
Well, right now, we're looking at a 2-week delay since the board's already voted on this.
Mr. President, since we have everybody here, is there any potential exposure either through the reports of the negative deck or the findings or the letters? I think there's concerns that there may be potential litigation issues or something else, or exposure to litigation as a result of moving forward with this project. Are you aware of any, or is there a consensus of the fact that just this component alone is this approving and moving forward with the negative deck?
I don't see, I'm not the attorney's standing over there, but I don't see any, at least do you see any legal issues in approving this? Is there, based on the comments letter we got, is there anything where we're on the fringe where people can sue over something?
Yeah, our attorneys should be making a comment on this. The clock is ticking, and I know that they're on our payroll.
I believe that our firm, with those who specialize in environmental issues, has reviewed these documents in conjunction with the staff here and given a clear bill of health to it.
Yeah.
So we believe that there's minimal risk regarding these environmental documents.
And again, I just think it'd be a shame that we basically let the developer off the hook on something that's good for the community, getting recycled water, and I don't see why you would want to serve the area with potable being conservative with recycle, and there is recycle committed to this.
Mr. General Manager, how long this thing has been on our docket and we've been reviewing?
Over 2 years, maybe longer.
How many years?
2 years, over 2 years, man.
So we've been discussing this. This is nothing.
No, all the way through. It's been everything been to the board for the consulting contracts, for Annalise's contract, for the environmental, for the,
Mr. President, and if I may, make a motion to revisit this item at this board meeting based upon the information that we have, that there's limited, if no, exposure to any litigation as an issue to move this project forward for consideration. I would like to make that motion to have our board reconsider.
Can we do that?
Reconsider the motion.
Reconsider the motion.
Based upon the information that we have on legal.
Okay, I'll second that.
Roll call.
Director Chacon, Director Heldman,
Yes.
Director Rigi, Director Hawkins,
Yes.
Director Oscui,
Yes.
Director Vasquez,
No?
Director Camacho Rodriguez,
No.
President Apodaca.
Yes.
Motion does not pass.
Respectfully, there's no sense dealing with 21 or 22 without environmental.
Let's go to 23, Mr. President. We gotta get out of here.
Thank you, Roman.
Item 23, approval of amendment number 2 to the agreement between the City of Vernon and Central Basin Municipal Water District.
If you recall, the the district has a contract with the city of Vernon since 2003 or 4. The principles for agreement were agreed by the board at the last board meeting. The changes basically, the agreement is exactly in accordance with the principles. Basically, what we've renegotiated is that the amount we owe is $1.707 million remaining on that. The interest rate would drop from 5 1/8% to 2.5%. It would be paid off by a reduction from our full recycle rate of $353 an acre foot until such time as the debt is totally defeased, and that's the basis of the agreement. They've agreed to our full rate, and to cut the interest rate, we've agreed to the amount and a discount to pay it off. It would take effect. The other thing that's in it is they withheld payment subject settling. They paid the old rate for the year. Part of this agreement is they would pay us back the money they withheld from our full rate for last year. We would in turn would pay them interest on the 1.7 at 2.5%. That's about $42,000 go their ways, and about $160,000 comes our way. So that's all part of the settlement. So it was approved by the City Council of Vernon last week.
So what's the recommended motion, sir?
That we approve the agreement, authorize me to sign it.
Move to approve the recommended motion. It's been a long day, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question of the general counsel on this item before we move forward. Have you reviewed the agreement?
Yes, I was fully aware of the negotiations by the general manager, and I believe, as I think I indicated at a previous meeting, I believe he did an excellent job in resolving a long-standing issue that could have had long legal issues to be resolved in court at the most efficient and effective way possible. That's to the benefit of the district in the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Heldman?
Yes.
Director Ariki?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Camacho Rodriguez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Legislative, 24 legislative update.
Good afternoon, directors. I'd imagine brevity would be appreciated at this point of day. As it relates to this month's legislative update, just a couple of items. As it relates to the Safe Drinking Water Fund, that's been one of the major water policy issues being debated this session, on how to provide funding for those communities that lack access to clean drinking water. There's various funding mechanisms that were proposed. The conference committee put together by members, both the Senate and Assembly, agreed in the budget negotiations to appropriate $100 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and $30 million from the General Fund for 2019-2020 fiscal year to deal with this issue. So there's no water, I guess as the water industry would call it, water tax to deal with this issue. In subsequent years, funding will be comprised of 5% from this fund to be capped at $130 million per year. Should the 5% of that fund fall below the $130 million threshold, the remaining balance would be appropriated from the general fund. And this proposal to fund the Safe Drinking Water Fund will sunset in 2030. Follow up on two bills of direct interest to the district. I'll do Assembly Bill 1220 real quick because that's the bill that would preserve the district's representation on Metropolitan Water District's Board of Directors. Passed out of the Senate Committee on Governance and Finance. I believe all yes votes, one abstention, and now is on the Senate floor. The other bill, Assembly Bill 591, which would provide clarity to the term representative and as it relates to the nomination and appointments of directors, also is on the Senate floor. It's also been amended to allow for the appointed directors to be seated on the first Friday in December, and that is currently on the Senate floor. So neither of those have any fiscal impact unless there are any questions. That's my report. Thank you.
General Counsel's report.
Yeah, only thing to report to the board is that the hotline that you established, the contractor reports that there's been no complaints lodged, but the company that provides that service has been acquired by another company, which indicates in a notice to us that it will not diminish or modify our arrangement with them. That's it. Thank you.
General Manager's report.
The next Central Basin MWD caucus is scheduled for Wednesday, July 31st, and will be held at Upper San Gabriel Valley Water District in Monrovia. The guest speaker will Kathy Villatella, who's Met State Representative, and she'll give us an update on legislative activities in Sacramento, water supply update. Also, reminder, the district will be closed next Friday, this Friday, as part of the normal Friday closure, and will be closed on the 4th of July in observance of the Independence Day holiday, and then I'll be off this Thursday moving. So.
Director's reports on any conferences or anybody?
Just to let you know, we had a Met tour of Diamond Valley. Members of staff were able to attend, as well as some of the purveyors and community. So I think that was a very useful explanation of the use of the Diamond Valley and the importance to providing us water.
Any director's comments on future agenda items?
I do have a comment. I would like to request once again the addition of an item for our Water and Resources Committee, a list of all of the purveyors and the benefits of all of the services that they get from Central Basin, from our education programs. I know we no longer have them, but I would like to do a benefits analysis for the past 5 to 7 years.
We have that for you, Director.
Okay, and I would like to review that in that committee. And item number 21, which is, the Montebello Recycled Water, pipeline. The fact that Central Basin is going to finance, this pipeline, that is an example of another benefit that the purveyors get from being a part of, the Central Basin. So there are so many benefits that are associated, to the purveyors that I think often go overlooked. So those are the sorts of things that I would like us to continue to document so that there is a more fair discussion about, these things as we move forward. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. Meeting's adjourned.